in case I hit the wrong button. I'm so useless. Right next to it, there's a pause. Yeah, I do think that get rid of that light. I would just like to read Bhagavatam once a week. And people come or they don't come. What's that got to do with glorifying Bhagavan and immersing the mind in the stories? I get as much out of this as anybody else. So I think we'll do this every week. I don't know when we'll start. I'll send an announcement out to the entire mailing list, and I think I'll create a separate mailing list so that if something comes up, I don't have to inform the entire mailing list, which is at this point several pages long. So you may all have to, I may create another link within the Svadhyaya for the weekly Bhagavata, and then you put your names in that. And that means you want to be informed, in case, obviously I'll be traveling sometimes and, this, that, and the other things will come up and I won't be able to do it. I think Friday seems to be the best day because I usually teach Tuesday and Thursday. Nobody wants to do anything on a Monday. So Wednesday is just stuck in the middle of the week. So let's keep it Thursday, 6 to 8. What's wrong with that? Okay, so let's do it. But I think I probably might do a Vedanta Sutra for everybody who's interested. Maybe January, February, because I'm on sabbatical next year. I have the whole year to do research, and I'll probably leave the country to go to India in March. Anyway, I'll figure it all out. But yeah, at this point, I'm inclined to just to do it. Just have a weekly satsang. Why not? Number one. Number two, I took all my courses down from the Rutgers courses down, but a few of you have shown interest in Sanskrit. I don't think I'll do a Sanskrit course. There wasn't enough. I didn't get enough feedback, and that's pretty intensive. Much as I love Sanskrit, I may change my mind, but I'm willing to make the Rutgers Sanskrit course available privately. I'm concerned about putting it on my website. Technically, Rutgers owns that, and they might object to sort of having it just made freely available. But if anyone is super serious, I'm going to go turn the gas off. Excuse me, the stove off. If anybody is super serious about Sanskrit, you have to be super serious. Then if my TA can figure out how to do it, because there's like 36 sessions, we did, a year and a half, we did the whole grammar. We did 2 grammars. We did the Goldman grammar, which is great, superb for beginners. And then we did a whole other grammar, which actually I own, because we did it over the summer, just for 3 or 4 students, just for our MA students, just to sort of really get them ready for PhD programs. So that's the second grammar, which is, I would say, middle level. That's all recorded somewhere on my computer. But if the person that manages my website knows how to send the first course, which was a year and a half or 2 years, and we did the entire grammar, Goldman grammar, then we started reading the Gita. So we did at least a chapter or 2 of the Gita. Then email me. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Akanda Mandalakaram Yena vyaptam characharam. Tat padam darshitam yena. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu, Dina Bandhu, Jagat Pate, Gopesha, Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta, Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gourange Radhe, Brindavaneshwari, Vrishabhanu Sute Devi, Pranamami Hari Priya. Apavitra Pavitro Va, Sarvavastha Piva, Ya Smaret Pundarikaksham, Sa Bhayabhyantara Shuchihi. That is our hope, my friends. Ya Smaret Pundarikaksham. If we remember the Lord with the lotus eyes, whatever our condition is, whatever histories we have, whatever gunas we frequent, apavitra pavitrova, sarvavasta, doesn't matter. Yatopiva, whatever state we've literally gone into, because we are free agents. So whatever state we're in is a state we've gone into with agency and free will, whether we knew it or not. I mean, nobody wants suffering. Well, but we act, and then that generates equal and opposite reaction. So our actions are free. So whatever state we find ourselves in, and might not even remember. Well, of course we don't remember past life actions. So we have no idea, why is this happening to me? I'm a good person. Why this? Why that? So gato piva, we've gone into this state, and irrespective of what that state is, beautiful invocation. Ya smaret. It's this Sanskrit doesn't actually have a subjunctive. The old Vedic Sanskrit had subjunctive. If is a subjunctive in, at least in the Greco-Latin system, or Western languages. But in Sanskrit, in later Sanskrit, post-Vedic Sanskrit, they don't have the subjunctive. That seems to have dropped out after the Vedic, Vedic Sanskrit is a bit different from classical Sanskrit. It's a bit like Chaucerian, it's more like, maybe Chaucerian English, Chaucer compared to modern English. You can understand a good deal of it, but there's all kinds of words and some grammatical formations that fall into disuse. And curiously, the Western languages retain the subjunctive. So if one remembers ya smaret in Sanskrit, it would be should one remember, or if might one remember, not surrender, but remember. If we remember the Lord with the lotus eyes, then we're pure inside and outside. So this is our prayer, and we will see how that plays out in the story that we have today. So here we go. The fourth book of the Bhagavata Purana, chapter 8. Suniti and Suruchi were the two wives of King Uttanapada. Suruchi was dearer to her husband than his other wife, Suniti, who was the mother of Dhruva. So Dhruva is our protagonist in this story. Let me just get rid of the volume in case there we are. Once the king, right, Uttanapada, lifted Uttama, the son of Suruchi, the other wife, the one that's dearer to him. Notice that the father and son are the same, just as we find in the West sometimes. You're named after your father or grandfather. He lifted the Uttama onto his lap, caressing him, but he did not welcome Dhruva, who also wished to climb up, right? So two wives, and they both have boys at the same age. So the king is not, it's not that he's just afraid. He's attached to this other wife, and that attachment makes him vulnerable to her. And therefore he knows it displeases her. Well, let's let the story unwind. As Dhruva, the son of her co-wife, was trying to do this, climb up on the lap of his father, along with his his half-brother, the arrogant Suruchi, the mother of Uttama, enviously said as follows in the hearing of the king: "Dear child, you should not try to climb up on the lap of your father, because, although you are the son of the king, you were not conceived by me in my womb. You're only a child, but nonetheless, you should know now. I should have said know now meaning at this age already. I didn't quite translate that very effectively. You should now know that unfortunately you were born from the womb of another woman, not from me. Therefore, you cannot fulfill your wish. If you desire the throne of the king, worship God, the supreme being, and attain my womb in your next life by his grace." Ooh. Dhruva's father looked on without saying a word. Pierced by the harsh words of his stepmother, Dhruva, because he's a warrior, and one thing about a warrior is you cannot tolerate offense. Warrior is all about honor. In all epic cultures, not just the Indian one. It's all about honor. Die, doesn't matter. You don't want wealth, you want fame and honor. So he's been dishonored. And even in the Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, when he, first he gives him some jnana yoga, and sort of, Arjuna is reeling a bit in right at the beginning of the Gita in teachings in chapter 2. The Gita sort of begins in 2:11 with the jnana, and then there's a few verses where he kind of steps out of the jnana yoga discourse and enters into the just to sort of kind of approach Arjuna with a more familiar discourse that he's more familiar with as a warrior. And he said, you know what, if you don't fight this battle, your enemies won't know that you don't want to fight because you don't want to kill your grandfather and your guru. They won't know that. They'll say you fled the battlefield out of fear. And for one who has been honored, dishonor is worse than death. That's not the language of a yogi. That's not the language that's the language of a warrior. Even in the Gita, you'll find the verse. We can find it quite quickly, around the 30s and 40s. So Dhruva was a warrior, kshatriya. So Suniti, the other wife now, the sort of discarded wife, the neglected one, lifted the boy onto her. Hang on. Dhruva went weeping to his own mother, breathing with anger like a snake struck by a stick. He's only 5. Suniti lifted the boy onto her lap. His upper and lower lips were trembling, and he was short of breath from anger. After hearing what had happened at length from the mouths of the other residents of the palace, right? Dhruva was so upset he couldn't speak. She became agitated at what had been said by her co-wife. Losing her composure, the woman, her face beautiful as a lotus, lamented with the burning fire of grief, like twine in a fire. You throw twine in the fire, it kind of twists up, it twists and contorts. Interesting metaphor. Thinking of the words spoken by her co-wife, his mother spoke, her words choked up with tears. Breathing heavily, the woman, who was unable to see the means of overcoming this intrigue, right? She has no power. She's just kind of a second best co-wife. What power does she have? She has no, who can she approach? It's that she's the wife of the king. There's no one higher. There's nothing. She has no means to overcome this intrigue. It was intrigue, right? The other wife is sort of is strategizing to get her son, to make sure her son gets the throne. So she's manipulating the king with that intention. So it's an intrigue. She said, "Do not wish harm on others, O son. A person who inflicts harm on others himself experiences the same." Suruchi, the co-wife, Dhruva's mother's still speaking. Suruchi, the other woman, spoke the truth. "I am an unfortunate woman, and you were born in my womb and reared on my breast. The king, Lord of the earth, is ashamed to keep me or even think of me as his wife. Accept without hostility whatever your stepmother told you, my son, since it is the truth. If you wish to take a seat like Uttama, right, the half-brother, on your father's throne, then you should worship the lotus feet of the lotus-eyed Lord Vishnu." So she's not particularly she's not necessarily a very learned person. She's a warrior. She's a queen, but she's heard from the Brahmanas about Vishnu. And one doesn't get the sense that either that she's deeply devoted or anything like that, but she just sort of says, depend on God. It is Vishnu who controls the gunas for the purpose of maintaining the universe. Indeed, Brahma himself, the unborn one, worshipped his feet. Remember the story at the beginning of the first story when Brahma comes to consciousness, he doesn't know who he is. So then he just surrenders. The voice says, do tapas. So it's reference to that. As a result of this, Brahma assumed the supreme post in the universe, which is honored by the yogis who have controlled their mind through breath restraints. That would be Patanjalian type yogis, right? Control the mind through pranayama. Likewise, the most honorable Manu. Manu is the author of the Dharma Shastras, the Dharma Sutras. If you're interested in the codes of Dharma, what are the duties of a king? What is the duties of a wife? What are the dharmas of the husband, etc. So Manu is the most famous there's several authors of Dharma Shastras, and Manu is the best known. So your own grandfather. So Manu, he worshipped Vishnu with concentrated mind through abundant sacrifices and charity. So he worshipped, he's a warrior, Manu, so he's not going to do Patanjalian yoga necessarily, but you can worship God with Vedic sacrifices and distribution of wealth. These are all, different ways, kind of a karma yoga type bhakti. He consequently gained worldly and celestial happiness, followed by liberation, which is difficult to attain by other means. So he went through the 4 normal stages of life, which is dharma. You do your dharma. This is not for yogis, but those who, have some worldly desires. You do dharma, as a result of which you get, good karma. You get artha, you get well-being that comes from doing dharma. And then that's the second goal, artha. The third is kama. You've heard of the Kama Sutra. So the third is, okay, you have mature well-being. So then you gratify the senses, especially sex, the most powerful desire. And then as a result of that, you get frustrated, disappointed. It doesn't live up to its fantasy version. So then finally the fourth goal of life. These are the arthas, the 4 arthas, purusharthas of conventional, and the 4th is moksha. So moksha is there, but it's sort of stuck on at the end. And that corresponds with the 4 stages of life. So there's 4 goals of life, and the 4 stages of life are brahmachari for 25 years, householder grihastha for 25 years, vanaprastha, husband and wife, again, celibate and sort of yogi couple, 25 years, and separation at the end, sannyasa. So that sort of maps on, not completely, but it maps onto the 4 goals of life, somewhat. It overlaps. I don't know whether it maps on completely. All right. So Manu then, he worshipped Vishnu and he gained worldly and celestial happiness. So clearly his bhakti is a little bit mixed. It's mixed with, as we're going to see, is one of the messages of the story. It's mixed. It's not pure bhakti. Perhaps he was worshipping Vishnu for some boons, but he did eventually get liberation. Of course, the Bhagavatam not interested in that. So one can question how pure Manu's bhakti was, but let's not get sidetracked. Take shelter of Vishnu, child. He's affectionate to his devotees. Its lotus feet are the path of liberation sought for by those desiring liberation. So this is not pure bhakti. This is Patanjalian bhakti, actually. You do Ishwara Pranidhana not because for love of Ishwara. You do it because Ishwara Pranidhana, Samadhi Siddhir, chapter 2, Ishwara can give you Samadhi. So this is what the bhakti traditions of the 16th century, Krishna traditions, which sort of exploded in the north of the subcontinent in 16th century, they would call it Jnana Mishrita Bhakti. It's bhakti, but mixed with a desire for liberation. And it's contrasted with pure bhakti. Those of you that did the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, our last Swadhyaya course, I think, whenever that was, some distant past, will remember that in the Bhagavatam is the support for this idea that liberation is not sought by real bhaktas. They just want to serve God and love God. And if God wants, so they don't even pray to leave the mature world. They don't even pray for cessation of suffering. All they pray for is love. They do pray for that, and that's bhakti. So this is kind of mixed bhakti. So nevertheless, she's a queen, and the king. So that's not surprising. Fix that supreme person. Okay, sorry. Firm in the performance of your personal duty, your dharma. This is the teaching of the Gita, do your dharma, and fix that supreme person in your mind and devote yourself to him exclusively. Chapter 9, Yat Karoshi, Yat Dasnashi, Yat Juhosi, Didasi, Yat Tapasyasi Kaunteya Tat Kurusva Madarpanam, Krishna says. Whatever you do, whatever your duties are, whatever you eat, whatever sacrifices you do, right? Manu was doing all these sacrifices, do them as an offering to me. Whatever tapas you do it as an offering to me. So in that way, dharmic activities don't just generate good karma, which they would do if there's no bhakti. If you do karma, not as a yogi, but just, but according to the rules, like the rules of Manu, you get good karma, get a good next birth. But Krishna then is advising against that because, Abrahma Bhuvana Loka Punaravartino Arjuna, wherever you go in the universe, even Brahma's realm, you come back down. Puna avartino Arjuna. Mam upechyuta kunteya. Puna janma navidyate. But if you come to my realm, says Krishna, you won't be reborn. So therefore, we should be familiar with the idea by now. Bhaktas certainly don't seek the celestial realms, but they also don't seek liberation. But here is mixed bhakti. So she continues, I cannot find anyone else to remove your frustration other than Lord Vishnu with the lotus petal eyes. Pundarikaksha. Other people seek the goddess of fortune, who holds a lotus in her hand. So that's Lakshmi. People worship Lakshmi. You go to India and very typical, you go to some stall or some little business or big business, and you might see a picture of a Lakshmi on the wall. She blesses with good fortune. So other people, those who seek wealth, they seek the goddess of fortune who holds a lotus in her hand. She's always going to hold a lotus in her hand if you notice next time you see a picture of her. But she herself seeks him. What's the point in seeking Lakshmi when Lakshmi herself is seeking Vishnu? So, okay, next chapter. These words spoken by his mother were intended for his welfare. Poor woman couldn't do anything else. She had no real power in the palace. So all she could do was point him to take shelter of God. So after hearing them, Dhruva controlled his mind with the mind, right? Atmana, Atmane, Atmanam. What's controlling the mind? When you chitta vritti nirodha, what's nirodhing the mind? The chitta is not the Atman. Atman has willpower, but it's not doing anything. It can somehow send out some sort of a message of will that then has to be translated into and appropriated by the buddhi, by the chitta in the form of the nirodha samskara, the higher. Sometimes in Sankhya they might use the language of the buddhi controlling the manas, the higher part of the cognitive, the chitta controlling the lower part. You can think of it that way. Patanjali doesn't. He just says chitta. I mean, he does use the term manas a couple of times, and he uses the term buddhi, synonym sattva, but mostly his psychology just revolves around the chitta, which is all of that in one, or the manas, the ahankara, and the buddhi all in one. So, so what's controlling the mind? The mind's controlling the mind. So you're meditating, and you're chanting your mantra, right? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then the mind wanders off. Right? And then you might be spaced out for 5 minutes, thinking of this, that, and the other. And then this little voice in the head says, whoa, you're getting distracted. Come back to the mantra. So what's that then? That's the mind controlling the mind. One part of the mind is wandering off, and the other part is, you can call it the nirodha samskara. That's perfectly okay. You can say it's the buddhi, whatever you want to say, but it's a part of the mind that's observing and has the capacity to control the lower part of the mind. The Shvetashvatara Upanishad, or is it the Kata? There's the Kata that says, the body's like a chariot. The horses are the senses. The reins are the mind. The reins of the horses. And the driver of the chariot is intelligence. And the Atman is just a passenger, not doing anything. It's giving directions, but but not like sort of, there's free will there. but really the driving is being done by the intelligence, which is controlling the mind. So that helps us think of the chariot. So if you want to use the model, buddhi and manas, then you're chanting a mantra. Manas is wandering off, the mind, thinking about what's for breakfast, and then the buddhi at some point, activates and says, "Whoa, hang on a minute, come back. You're supposed to be meditating." So that's you can say the mind controlling the mind, you can say buddhi controlling whatever you want to say, but it's all going on in the mind, is the point, really. So therefore we have this statement, he controlled the mind with the mind. And he set out from his father's city. At 5, he just leaves to find Vishnu. Well, he's a kid. He's okay, I'll go look for Vishnu then. He thinks he's going to find him, outside the palace somewhere. He's a 5-year-old kid. You tell him to look for Vishnu. He says, all right, off he goes looking for Vishnu. Very cute. The sage Narad, remember Narad? Okay, so Narad is the one who, where do we find Narad? Which story do we have Narad? Oh, Angiras, the king with the lost dead son. We had him there. He comes down. Why are you lamenting? Okay, I'll bring your son back. Remember that? His son comes back and says, which parents are you? And we might have had, Narad always appears. He's like a celestial guru. He appears, gives instructions and departs. You recognize him in art because he's dressed usually in saffron as an ascetic with a C, ascetic, not th. An ascetic, and he has a top knot or shaved head, depending on artistic rendition of him. But he holds a veena. That's how you know it's a veena. Looks like a sitar, but with just 4 strings, I think. Veena, yeah. Ekata has 1. Okay, so down he comes. The sage Narad overheard all this and understood Dhruva's intentions, and Dhruva means fixed. So it comes from Dhri, I believe. Why is there a U there? We'll have to think about that. Astonished, so down he comes from the celestial realm. He touched Dhruva on the head with his hand, which can remove all sins. He's a great Mahabhagavata, one of the 12 great devotees in a cosmic cycle. There's 12 of them. They're called Mahajanas. And one of them is Narad. So he says, oh, just see the potency of the warrior caste, Kshatriya, because Dhruva's a prince. So he's not going to the forest as a yogi. He's going to get revenge. And Narada say, wow, this 5-year-old, this warrior nature is manifesting. All the samskaras of the past life are just, overtaking his mind. He's a real warrior. Cannot tolerate offense. Oh, just see, I love this. Just see the potency of the warrior caste, the Kshatriyas. They cannot bear a slight on their pride. We know from the Gita, right? The first lesson of yoga is you've got to rise above honor and dishonor, Arjuna. Rise above the dvandvas, the dualities, hot, cold, honor, dishonor, right? The first teaching. That's for the yogis. But the Kshatriyas who are not yogis, they cannot tolerate an offense. Just see the potency. They cannot bear a slight on their pride. Even though this one is a mere child, he has taken the unjust words of his stepmother to heart. Narada said, my son, I still cannot fathom how notions of honor and dishonor can exist in a young boy like you, who is attached to playful games and such things. So how are you? You're 5. You're not supposed to be, sort of conscious of things like honor and dishonor. Even if the distinction between honor and dishonor has already made its presence felt in your life, there's no cause for anyone to be frustrated other than because of ignorance, right? Now we're back to the Gita, right? It's because of ignorance that we identify with body, mind. And so we identify with hot, cold, like, dislike, honor, dishonor, the dualities, the dvandvas, the Vedanta sort of term. So it's, so now he's giving him jnana yoga. First of all, he speaks to him, well, you're too young, right? Sort of cultural, but now he's giving him real jnana, which, if you know the second chapter of the Gita, is just classic Vedanta. There's no, right, because of ignorance, we identify with body, mind, and then we get subject to the dualities of body, mind. People have different lots in life according to their personal karma, right? Okay, jnana, you whatever happened to you is your karma, just accept it. Therefore, an intelligent person should just be satisfied with just, Therefore, an intelligent person should be satisfied with just whatever has been bestowed by providence, O child, Daiva. One should understand this is the way to reach Ishvara. You want to be looking for Vishnu? There's no point walking around the countryside. This is the way. You have to give up attachments, accept your karma, be detached, basic Bhagavad Gita type instructions. You now wish to gain his favor by following the yoga instructed by your mother. In my opinion, God is definitely not solicited easily by people, and he's not. Very hard to become pure bhakti, my friends. Even sages do not find the path that leads to him, despite searching for many births, free from attachment through intense yoga practices and states of samadhi, doing all this Patanjali and stuff. They might get their Atman. Can't find Bhagavan, because Bhagavan can only be won by pure 100% surrender. If you any desire, even for liberation or freedom from suffering, any jnana-related desire, you might get all of that. You won't get bhakti. So even the sages do not find the path. Right? Despite many births doing in Patanjali yoga, right? Intense yoga practices and states of samadhi. What are the states of samadhi? Well, Patanjali has 7 states, doesn't he? Savitarka, Nirvitarka, Savichara, Nirvichara, Ananda, Asmita, and then Nirbija, 7. There's different states. Therefore, you had better give up this useless endeavor of yours. You can attempt it later when a better occasion presents itself, right? You do it later in life. Don't, so many people, do we tell ourselves a story sometimes? I hope not. Oh, later when I'm old. No, my friends. It gets harder as you get older. Become weaker, feebler, more full of fear, and because you're less able to less energy, less able to take care of yourself, so more fearfulness and more attachments. You've got to do it when you're young, build that practice. And if it doesn't matter if you take the path later or old age, it doesn't matter, but don't procrastinate. So therefore, you'd better give up this useless endeavor of yours. You can attempt it later. 33. An embodied being, so now some more jnana, who is self-content. Do you all understand when I say jnana, right? And hopefully you're not confusing it with dhyana with a DH. Dhyana is what Patanjali meditation is called. In the larger yogic world, it's not called Ashtanga, it's not called Samadhi, it's called Dhyana. Even though in the Patanjalian system, Dhyana is the 7th limb, that's the way he schematized it, but in the larger corpus, there's different names are given to it, but probably the most common is Dhyana, DH. So when I'm talking about jnana means Vedanta knowledge, which just means, you're not the body, life is suffering, you're not the body, you're the Atman, seek the Atman, because everything else will frustrate you, desires don't fulfill, all of that goes in the category of jnana with a JN. It's the only word one of the very, very few words in Sanskrit that you don't pronounce as it's written. It's written jnana, and that's why Sanskrit is very, very regular. Don't be afraid of it. As it's written, that's how you pronounce it. It's a bit like Italian and completely unlike English.
You've already
right. More jnana, an embodied being who is self-content in whatever situation of happiness and distress has been ordained by destiny, right? Karmically, we're going to receive a certain amount of happiness and distress, my friends. Think about it. When do you seek distress? Does anyone seek distress?
I'm just
probably no. And I mean, probably some. I've learned never to say no. Someone says, "Well, yeah, I like her suffering actually," but for the most part, people do not seek distress, but it comes. If that's the case, wouldn't it be logical that even though we seek happiness, it will come? Unhappiness, suffering comes whether we seek it or not. It comes. If you accept that happiness and distress are just 2 sides of the same coin, if you can accept that, raga dvesha, right, sukha dukkha, consider that distress comes whether we seek it or not. If that be the case, then it's logical to concede that happiness will come whether we seek it or not. It's obvious. I'll say it again. If distress comes whether we seek it or not, so does happiness. So therefore, why seek it? Our karma is going to be our karma. So that sort of overlaps with what he's saying here. An embodied being who is self-content, whatever situation, happiness, and dress has been ordained by destiny. It's all ordained by karma. Of course, we respond to it and make new karma. It's not that it's not, you know, in philosophy, they call this, you know, there's determinism, then there's voluntarism, then there's compatibilism, right? So determinism is, you know, everything is, you know, Big Bang and all the molecules and everything is already predetermined, like Newtonian physics, you know, everything is predetermined. If you were omniscient, you could know exactly what the universe state would be in 100 years, and there's no free will. That's determinism. Voluntarism is that, no, there is free will, and compatibilism is some sort of blending of those two. Well, actually, the Indian traditions are compatibilistic. There is determinism, meaning that your past karma is determined and that will come to you. Your happiness and distress is determined, but how you respond to it is voluntarism. You have free will. So if you wanted a fancy term in philosophy, I believe that's called compatibilism, right? I'm not particularly familiar with Western philosophical categories. Okay. So therefore, it's been ordained by destiny, happiness and distress. So if you can be content in that, Narada tells little Dhruva, such a person attains the state beyond darkness, meaning beyond the gunas. If one is overwhelmed with happiness for someone with higher qualities and sympathy towards one with lower qualities, that's a bit like the Maitreyi verse in Patanjali, right? You have compassion for those lesser. How does it go? You make friendship, you know, Maitri, Karuna, whatever they are, right? It's a bit like that. So if we can do this, right, so you overwhelmed with happiness for someone with higher qualities, sympathy towards one with lower qualities, and seeks friendship with one's equal qualities, one is never overcome by difficulty. So my friends, we all have to seek friendship with the yogis, and if we wish to, if we're really serious about the spiritual path, our friends will all be yogis and bhaktas, period. But one can be happy for you know, with people with higher qualities, and there's no envy there. We can recognize that, you know, that can give us hope that we too can attain higher qualities. And sympathy with lower qualities, we can be compassionate. That doesn't mean if someone wrote to me, emailed me and said, well, you know, if you know, well, anyway, let's not get sidetracked. Sympathy towards one with lower qualities. Okay, we read that. If we can do that, one is never overcome by difficulties. In other words, basically detachment. Dhruva replies, little 5-year-old boy, this equilibrium of mind, remember in the Gita, how's yoga defined? Samatvam yoga uchate, 248 and 250, yoga karma sukaushalam. So samatvam, equilibrium, samaha, tva. Tva is the state of, samaha. Indo-European cognate with the English word same. Same and samaha are cognates. They come from an original 5,000, who knows how many millennia ago, root. So the equilibrium of mind, that's how Krishna defines Gita, not like Patanjali, because Krishna, the Gita is action yoga. Patanjali is nirodha, complete and utter inactivity, not equilibrium, no. And maybe on the path, but the goal of Patanjali is nirodha 100%. But the Gita is action in the world. So you can't be in a state of nirodha, because then you'd be like the Walking Dead. So bumping into walls. So therefore, what is the mind? It's samaha, and it's filled with jnana yoga and bhakti yoga, and one navigates the world. That's a story. That's another story. So this equilibrium of mind, and I bet the footnote there makes a connection to the Gita. I hope so. That you have taught out of compassion for people who are afflicted by happiness and distress, good sir. Right? We're constantly afflicted by happiness and distress. So the only way most people try to minimize distress and maximize happiness. But of course, that's impossible because happiness and distress are already predetermined. So therefore, how to deal with it? Equilibrium. Just be detached from both. You can't be detached from distress and you have to be detached from both. To the extent you're attached to happiness, to that extent, you'll be affected by distress. So one has to be detached from both states. So that's samatvam, that you have taught out of compassion, right? Because Narada is a great guru, and gurus are compassionate. They just try to enlighten people with jnana and bhakti. It is difficult to realize for the likes of me, he says, I'm an uncouth soul, and I've inherited a fierce warrior nature. I'm a kshatriya. You know, he's respectful. He's not rejecting it. You know, you know, he's very polite. He's just saying, I can't do it. I'm too overwhelmed by rajas. My mind is too rajasic. I've inherited, right? The warriors are rajasic, right? King is a raja. The name for the king is raja. That's rajasic. You have to be rajasic to be a warrior or a king. So I've inherited this fierce warrior nature. Therefore, your instruction does not take root in my heart, which was pierced by the arrows of Surichi's harsh words. So he's not rejecting the instruction. His mind is too agitated, too insulted to be able to step out of that state and take advantage of the instructions. But he's respectful to the sage. And here's his desire. He wants to one-up. He's been so offended. He wants to one-up his father. Remember, is emperor of the known world. I desire to attain a domain which is highest in the three worlds. He was even higher than this celestial, this little boy. One that has not been ruled over, even by our grandfathers. That's Brahma, who you know, the whole universe is sort of like, yeah, he's the ruler of the universe, not in a warrior sense, but but Brahma is the primary celestial, nor by anyone else. So only a 5-year-old would say something like this. Please instruct me about the right path to achieve this goal, O Brahmana. He's saying, okay, I can't take your other instructions, but instruct me in this. Indeed, you, sir, Narad, are the son of Lord Brahma. That's another story. Highest of the celestial beings. Like the sun, you travel about for the welfare of the universe, plucking your Veena instrument, right? So he has this Veena instrument. So that's how you recognize Narad. When he heard this response, this honorable sage Narada was impressed. You know, I mean, after all, Krishna says in the Gita, he says, I am, you know, of the mighty I am might. He has this whole list of things, you know, mountains I'm Meru, of this I am that, of, you know, of aquatics I'm the shark. And he gives this list, and of, you know, and of warriors I am, what does he say? Anyway, so, you know, one can respect power. But of course, the bhakta is always, you know, Krishna says, I am that, I am that. So a bhakta, when they see power, they understand that this is just a sort of fragment, an expression, a kind of reflection of the Supreme Being. So bhaktas connect everything with God in some form or fashion, in some way or another. They connect everything with Bhagavan. So he replied to the boy kindly with words of truth. Narad said, the path of Vasudeva, Krishna, taught by your mother, will lead you to the ultimate goal. Worship Vasudeva with your soul dedicated to him. For one who desires the best for oneself, namely, these are the 4 goals I just mentioned: dharma, artha, kama, moksha, right? Dharma, righteous duty. These are the regular goals of the Vedic culture, not yogic culture, kind of bypasses all this and goes straight for moksha. And bhakti has 2 options. You can either do all of this but connect them and dedicate them to God, or you can also bypass everything and go to the forest, a bit like Bharata did and failed the first time round. You can also follow the path of the renunciates, but your goal is Bhagavan and not just Atman. So, you know, these, for one who desires the best for oneself, what's the best? That you do your dharma, that you, as a result, you get prosperity, and then you can fulfill your desire with the prosperity, and eventually you'll get fed up and you seek liberation, the 4 goals of life. For anyone who desires the best for oneself, there is only one source for these: service to the feet of Hari. So the sage is saying, well, even if you can't just go straight for the bhakti. Okay, fine. Do the regular Vedic sort of sequence of these 4 purusharthas, goal of life, but fix your mind and serve Bhagavan as you do those. I wish you good fortune in this, my son. Go to the Madhu forest, a holy place on the banks of the Yamuna river, Yamuna that flows through Vrindavan. It's so awfully polluted now, you can't take bath. And by the way, there's not one drop, and I mean this, not one drop, not being rhetorical, not one drop of Yamuna water flowing through the sacred town of Vrindavan. It's all recycled Delhi factory water now. There's a documentary on it. So people are going, when I went to India, we would swim every day. It was, we were living in the ashram in the late 70s, and it was the highlight of our day. We'd go down and we'd strip down to our kopins, kind of loincloths. We used to wear loincloths, and we would swim in the Yamuna. And it was just the best part of the day. And then we'd sit on the banks, we'd do kirtan. Now, forget it. You put your big toe in, you put your toenail in, the big toe will fall off. It's so polluted. And all the pilgrims go still, because that the text say bathe in the holy rivers, and it's all recycled factory water. Modi was supposed to change all of that, but nothing has changed. So that's just a side comment. But anyway, so back then, of course, Madhu Forest, holy place on the banks of the Yamuna River. The presence of Hari is always in that place. I'm not sure where it is, but I'm going to guess it's what later becomes known as Vrindavan, when Krishna incarnates, the Madhuvan, because there is Madhuvan. It must be the same. Madhuvan means forest. Yeah, it's Madhuvan. So that's one of the, what's it, 8 or 12 forests of Vrindavan. And if you do a big pilgrimage in Vrindavan, you visit the 12 forests. And there's a book called The 12 Forests of Vrindavan. I think it's by David Haberman. So Madhu, so that's Vrindavan. So he's sending him to Vrindavan. Of course, Krishna hasn't appeared. This is before Krishna's incarnation. But notice the presence of Hari is always in that place, because bhaktas will say that Krishna is always in Vrindavan, both the terrestrial Vrindavan and the divine, realm in Brahman, the eternal realm that Krishna made of pure consciousness. But he's coexists in both. As a matter of fact, bhaktas will say there's actually no difference, because of the terrestrial Vrindavan that we see with our worldly, earthly eyes, actually is coextensive with the spiritual Vrindavan. It's not, we say this Vrindavan versus that Vrindavan, but actually it's the same. It's just that one we karmically go in with our material bodies. We karmically go into what we think of as 2 hours south of Delhi, but the great bhaktas who have perceived the spiritual realm, they are not inhabiting the same. Their bodies might be there, but they're inhabiting a divine realm when they're in Vrindavan. So they're able to tap into the divine leelas that are eternally ongoing. They're eternally ongoing in Vrindavan. We just don't see them. We don't have access to them. Only great Maha Bhagavatas do. So here we get a sense of that. The presence of Hari is always in that place. After bathing there constantly in the auspicious waters of the Kalindi, the Yamuna River, and performing the rites appropriate for you, given your age, whatever they are, dedicate your time there on a suitable seat, asana, for practicing yoga. Okay, so now we've got a bhakti-ized Patanjalian yoga, which we had earlier. Notice I picked all the narratives that overlap with Patanjali because I wanted to create a bridge. I've told you this before, given that most of you are familiar with Patanjali. So these stories I've chosen for these 7 episodes, and then the 8th will be Krishna Lila, have some, for the most part, have featured Patanjali in yoga. So we had Bharat sitting at the banks of the river. We had not all of them, but some of them. What else did we have? We have Brahma sitting on a lotus and performing Patanjali in yoga when you heard the word tapas. And then we had another story. Yeah, we had the actual 8 limbs of yoga story. So there we are. Here we are again. Notice that the word asana means a seat. Asa is to sit down. So here's another sort of rendition, another framing of Patanjali in yoga. First, cast off gradually the impurities of the mind, the kleshas, right? Why do you do Kriya Yoga? Klesha Tanu Karana, chapter 2, first verse, right? First verse, Tapaha Svadhyaya Ishvara Pranitana. Second verse, why do you do that? Klesha Tanu Karana, Samadhi Bhavana Artaha, to bring about Samadhi, but Klesha Tanu Karana, the Karana, the reason to do that is Klesha Tanu, to weaken the Klesha. So the same thing, impurities, Klesha. First, cast off gradually. Takes time. The impurities of the mind, senses, of life airs, the prana, by the 3 forms of breath control, right? You all know what they are, whatever they are, Rechika, Purvaka, and whatever the restraint is, Rechika, Purvaka, whatever. Then you should meditate on Vishnu, right? Ishvara, the supreme guru. There is again Ishvara. What does Patanjali say about Ishvara? Guru Purvesham Samayana Vichinnaha, something like that. Ishvara is Guru Purvesham, he's the guru of the ancient. Oh no, Kala Anavichinnaha, he's not affected by time. See how this maps on? They all do. It's all coming out of the same milieu, my friends. Patanjali just picked up one strand and schematized it in you know, to preserve it for posterity. And here we are in the 21st century reading it in you know, New Jersey and everywhere else. He's the supreme guru. Meditate on Vishnu with a fixed mind, right? That's dharana dhyana. He's always mercifully inclined, and his eyes and face are always benevolent. So no, Patanjali, the way Patanjali, the method Patanjali gives us to focus the mind on Ishvara is tasya vachikaha pranavaha to japa, to dharta bhavanam, that he comes in the form of Om and do japa on the Om. So that's one way of fixing the mind, but there's others, and we had it in an earlier story a few weeks ago. The other way of fixing the mind is to actually fix it directly on the form of Bhagavan. It's more pleasing than just Om, boring old impersonal mantra. Yeah, don't quote me for saying that. Oh, it's recorded now forevermore. Fine. He's always mercifully inclined. But for the bhaktas, Om is an impersonal mantra. It is impersonal. It's a seed, but it hasn't manifested. The presence of Ishwara is there in seed-like form. Patanjali even calls it a bija, a vachika. No, he doesn't call it bija. He calls it but Om is a bij mantra, which is a seed. So, but the bhaktas are not, but the Krishna bhaktas, they never chant Om, unless it's at the beginning of, and then Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, keep the Om there, but let's see what does that seed produce? Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The bhaktas want personal Bhagavan, not impersonal Brahman. So they're not particularly interested in Om, and they accept it, they revere it, they honor it, but that's not going to be their japa mantra. It's going to be personal, fully manifest Bhagavan. So Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And then the Vallabhis, Shri Krishna Charanam Mam. And the Krishnas, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That's my tradition. And the sort of the more Vishnu-focused traditions that see Krishna as an incarnation of Vishnu. The Bhagavatam doesn't. Bhagavatam says Krishna is the source of Vishnu. But the other Puranas, and including the Krishnamacharya Iyengar tradition, they're devotees of Krishna, but they see that they're primarily Vaishnavas in the sort of in the South Indian sense of Vishnu is the supreme, and so their mantra is Om Namo Narayanaya, which is also a very majestic mantra. So, but here he's being, let's see where we go. So he's describing his beauty. So Dhruva can fix his mind on the beauty. His eyes and face are always benevolent. His nose and eyebrows are gorgeous. His cheeks are delightful. He far surpasses the celestials in beauty. He's God. God has to be beautiful, my friends. If you say God isn't beautiful, then you deprive God of a quality, and God must have all qualities. All qualities. God is the being, as Anselm put it, great theologian Anselm, Christian theologian, is the being than whom nothing greater can be conceived. So if you know something, then you have knowledge, then God must be that one who has maximum knowledge. So that's omniscience. If you have power, then God must be that one who has maximum power. So that's omnipotence. So the bit that the Christian theologians, or at least the Western traditions, piggybacking on Aristotle and Plato, the bit that they missed out on from the point of view of the Bhagavatam and the Indian traditions is beauty. God must be, he's all famous. Okay, everybody agrees he's all famous. Who's more famous than God? Even if you deny God, he's famous enough for you to deny his existence. So that's famous. So he's famous. I mean, he's all of that. But the Indian traditions stress beauty. Why do you think there's all these descriptions in the Shiva Puranas of Shiva, and they're all lotus eyes, and you just try to use the best metaphors you have at your disposal to capture beauty? So here, let's see how he does it. Look. He's youthful and his limbs are attractive. Remember, the body is not made of matter, because matter is made of parts, and you can separate parts. If something has Our bodies are made of parts, organs and nails, and you can put it apart, then there's no body anymore. So then it's not eternal. But God's body is not like, nor is there an inside and an outside. We're an Atman in a body. So therefore, there's a part. There's a part that's the Atman. There's a part that's not. There's this part that's a psychic body. There's a part. So if there's parts, you can separate them. And that's the whole point of jnana, to separate the Atman from the rest of it. Not God. There's no parts. There's no inside and outside. It's not like Vishnu is a soul in Vishnu's body. No. Vishnu is, that's his entire spiritual being, eternal form that manifests in the world. And it's not a limitation to say, well, if you have a form, then you're stuck in one place and you're not everywhere else. No, Vishnu can be in 1,000 places, can manifest infinite forms, and simultaneously manifest the world as his Shakti, as a Shakti. So he's everything and simultaneously. So he's impersonal and personal. But the personal, in the Vaishnava tradition, the personal is the highest, is the cause, the causal, the ultimate causal presence. It's the cause of all other causes. And that's the difference between the Advaita school and the Vaishnava school. The Advaita school will say the forms are secondary and impersonal Brahman is ultimate, and Shankara will go so far as to say actually all forms are ultimately illusory anyway. They never existed in the first place. So that's radical Advaita. Anyway, Bhaktas are interested in this. Beautiful Krishna. He's a personal being, not impersonal, not some all-pervading Chitti, Shakti. No, he's a personal being. His color is dark blue. If you're going to be beautiful, then you have to be visible. If something's beautiful, it's visible, right? If a piece of art is beautiful, well, you have to be able to see it to say it's beautiful. So therefore, if something's beautiful, right, then it's perceivable. And if it's perceivable, it must have color. You can't perceive air or ether. So therefore, all the forms have their colors. Shesha's white, Radharani is gold, Krishna's black, dark blue. So, but dark blue like a rain cloud, Ghanashama. Even if he gets Caucasian eyes, nowadays you see pictures of Krishna, he's all practically white with a little blue mascara. He's actually dark blue, black. Beautiful Ghanashama. His color is dark blue. He wears a garland of forest flowers. And this description is repeated again and again and again and again and again throughout the Bhagavatam. Why? So that we internalize it. Why? So that when we sit and meditate, all the samskaras are so deeply entrenched that we can summon those samskaras together, put them together and create a mental deity and focus our mind on that. Deities can be made of marble, they can be made of metal, they can be made of sand, they can be made of jewels. I think the Bhagavatam lists either 8 or 12 things. They can be made of paint, like a painting can be a deity if you treat it that way. And they can be made of mind stuff, samskaras as a deity. And what's the idea? You concentrate with devotion, not just with ego and willpower. It's got to be bhakti, complete surrender. Then what? Then the deity melts and the actual form of Bhagavan manifests in your mind or in the deity. So many, India's full of stories of the deities that the breaking out of the deity in the temple, the actual divinity coming forth. We saw that with Kali in the Bharat story, remember? Kali bursts out of her deity. It's taken very seriously by bhaktas. So he's a personal being. There, look, personal. I have to bang away at this because you know, Hinduism has come to the West has been so impersonally, almost exclusively impersonal. So it's important to sort of honor that and recognize that as obviously the Jnana traditions are real and legitimate, and they take you where they tell you they're going to take you. But there is a personal option. His color is dark blue. He wears a garland of forest flowers, and he's characterized by the Srivatsa tuft of hair. You won't see this on the pictures because it's tiny, but he has a little tuft of hair. Why? Because he's God. That's why. What are you going to do? Sue him? Tell him you can't. Sorry, God, you can't do that. We don't like hairy chests. Good luck with it. Good luck with that. He has 4 arms. That's Vishnu now. Why 4 arms? Well, why not? Each one distinct in holding a conch, discus, club, and lotus, respectively. People say, well, this is anthropomorphism. You're just projecting your human right? Going back to what was his name? The Greek philosopher before Plato. There's only a few fragments of his writing left. His name begins with an A, Anax something or other. He said, man just creates God in his own image. So if the horses were to think theologically, their God would be a horse. He's the first one to say, come up with what we now call anthropomorphism, that you project your qualities on God. The opposite is true, my friends. It's theopomorphism. We have form because God has form. That's how Bhaktas would understand man is made in the image of God. Christians struggle with that from the amount of speculation on what that means. But one thing from about the 3rd century that was excluded from that was that actually we're made in the image of God because we have form and God has form. That possibility falls out of theological consideration around the 3rd century because of Greek and the absorption of Greek philosophy into Christian theology by the early church fathers like Origen and others. So we need to get this idea that God has a form. We get that out there and into the Western theological, monotheistic landscape. And there's some good students. It's one thing that I've tried to do in my time at Rutgers is train students, because I don't really have a background in Western philosophy. Train students to and push them into PhD programs, philosophy PhD programs, so that they can start bringing these, so we can cross-fertilize. And for me, one of the big contributions of Indian monotheism, Vaishnava monotheism, is the notion that God is beautiful. And that means form and color and characteristics and all this cool stuff, all made of pure consciousness. And we have form because we're like Plato's shadow on the cave. Our forms are just dead body forms, animated for a few decades by a soul. But the prototype is in the divine realm. Okay. And he goes on. He wears earrings and an ornate headdress and is endowed with armlets and bracelets. His neck is adorned with a Kaustuba gem, and he wears a yellow silken garment. Girded with a belt of bells and wearing shining golden anklets, he is the most beautiful sight of everything that is worth beholding. Here's Anselm's definition of God, that from whom no greater being can be conceived. And God must have infinite qualities. So why are we avoiding beauty? There's a missing step in Western theologies, a missing ingredient, because they're being hijacked by Aristotle and Plato, my friends. I'm writing a book about it, and I'll lay the whole argument out, the whole history, tracing the whole history from Aristotle and Plato into the early church fathers, into the great theologians, Aquinas and Aristotle, and right through the entire Western intellectual tradition and into the colonial period, where you suddenly encounter God with form, and you call them monstrosities and icons and graven images and demoniac. There's a whole story to be told, my friends, and it's going to be told. Girded with the belt, he is the most beautiful sight of everything that is worth beholding. This is a vision of God. There actually were a couple of prophets who seem to have seen God. And even Moses saw the back of God, whatever that means. He is peaceful and enlivening to the eyes and the mind. One should worship his feet, resplendent with the brilliance of his ruby-like toenails. I mean, you're just trying to grasp at whatever things you have in this world that somehow can approximate beauty. So you come up with rubies and gems and all of that. You're using inadequate language, but you're at least doing the best you can in order to underscore the point that God is a beautiful person, a beautiful being. So ruby-like toenails. He is situated in the Atman. His seat is the pericarp of the lotus of the heart. So the Vaishnavas would say that actually Ishvara is always with us, always adjacent to the soul, a bit like the guardian angel in Christianity. But it's actually God, not an angel. And that's called the Antaryamin, or Paramatma by the Vaishnavas. He is the ultimate bestower of boons. With concentrated, if you want boons, of course, the Bhaktas want boons. What boon do they want? Pure love. Shamelessly, they can shamelessly ask for that. That you have to ask for that. We beg for it. But that's all, nothing else, not even moksha. But we beg for a drop of bhakti. This is bhava bhakti. So that's the boon we want. With concentrated mind, right? It's concentration there. One should constantly contemplate him smiling and casting affectionate glances. So rather than concentrating on Om, but he's actually going to give him a mantra in a minute. When the mind is meditating on the auspicious form of the Lord in this way, it is quickly immersed in supreme bliss and never ceases to be so. It's not Ishvara starts. Remember that we chant at the beginning of the invocation. Apavitra pavitro va sarvavasta katopi va yasmaret. Well, not quite. But anyway, never ceases to be immersed in bliss. Now he's going to give him a japa. Now hear the highest and most intimate, sacred sound recitation, japa. All right, Patanjali, the japa tadartha bhavanam, but he gives us the impersonal one. What's Narada going to give him? A person reciting this aloud for 7 nights. Who was it that did 7 nights? Oh, it was Chitraketu, wasn't it? After, the dead son comes back, and then he wakes up and realizes the illusory nature of family attachments. He goes off in the same thing, 7 nights. Do you remember? And he has a vision of Shesha, the last story, or the story before last. So something to do with 7 nights. Anyway, a person reciting this aloud for 7 nights will be able to see the mystic beings who travel through the air. That's not, of course, the goal, but you know something's happening if you start seeing celestial beings. And at least that's a good signpost that you're on the road. You start seeing things, you want to see God, true, okay, fine. But that you just have to wait for the grace of God. And then you have to surrender and just accept God will appear or not appear as he wishes. But in the meantime, you get to see pretty other cool stuff. Remember, and Chitraketu, but he kept going. He saw the celestial beings, but he kept going. He saw the celestial realms, I think it said. He didn't get distracted. So maybe this is just a test. Oh, Prince. So here's the mantra. Om Namo Bhagavate. That should be a long A there. It's a typo. It should be Bhagavate. I think. Om Namo Bhagavate. Bhagavate. No, it's Om Namo Bhagavate. Vasudevaya. A wonderful mantra. I actually like it. Personally, I like it better than the Hare Krishna mantra, but because I'm in the Gaudiya lineage, I obviously accept the mantra of the lineage and my guru. But this is it's a wonderful mantra. I find it. Now the difference between this one is there's still some majesty here. This is not a Vraj Leela mantra. That's why we do the Hare Krishna mantra, because in Vrindavan, in Vraj, in Krishna's realm, there's no awareness of Krishna's majesty. We'll talk about that next week. So therefore, his mother can scold him, his friends can play with him, the gopis can adore him because they don't realize he's God. And that's the name, that's Krishna and Govinda and Gopala. Those names belong to Vraj, where God hides his majesty, his Aishwarya, his Ishwaraness. Ishwarhood is called Aishwarya. Ishvara's nature is called Aishwarya. That's hidden by Yogamaya, and we will talk about that next week. There is still majesty here. This is still God, the majestic Vasudeva. So that's why the Braj traditions they love this mantra. I mean, you can chant it in kirtan. It's not that you don't chant it, but it's not your japa mantra, because this is Krishna when he leaves Vrindavan, and the Mahabharata war Krishna, and the Dvarka Krishna, and the Krishna outside of Vraj is Vasudeva. Okay. So recite this mantra. Reciting this mantra, one who is wise and understands how to adjust to context, right, should make a physical form of the Lord and worship it with various paraphernalia according to time and place. So you have to be mature. Dhruva is going into the forest, so he doesn't have marble. He doesn't have a forge to make a metal deity. So you have to be mature, adjust to context. And he made a deity out, I think it was sand. We'll find out in a minute. So you can, if you want to start puja, don't get all distraught. Don't think I have to fly to Jaipur, and you do that when you can. But in the meantime, find a nice picture, right? Be mature, wise, who understands how to adjust to context. Why wise? Because you don't want to take shortcuts. You're going to be careful. You do the best you can. Not that you just sloppy and say, oh, I can't be bothered, or I just throw this up. And no, you do the best you can, but you accept it's about bhakti. So the best you can might be for now, a little picture. So that's wise and understands how to adjust to context. Maybe you're traveling, maybe you're whatever on the road. You can't be dragging a whole temple room around with you. You should make a physical form of the Lord and worship it with various paraphernalia according to time and place. You don't have any fruits, well, offer some incense. Don't have incense, well, flowers. Okay, it's winter, no flowers. We'll find a pretty leaf then from the garden, an evergreen leaf. Something that's pretty, and put it in a vase and offer it to your Bhagavan. So this is bhakti, but it takes wisdom and adjust to context. After all, bhakti is very different in Gujarat than in Orissa, than in Vrindavan, than in South India. Just the art and the draw and everything's different. So it's adjusted to culture and context. So why shouldn't it be in the West? As long as it's not hippy dippy, happy-go-lucky. You try to follow tradition, you follow the teachers, you follow the lineage, but we're in the West, so you adjust to context. One should worship the Lord with pure water, garlands of forest flowers, roots and fruits, right? So he's in the forest, so he has to these are the beautiful, this is what's offerable from the forest. Freshly cut sprouts and stems. Notice if you don't have flowers and sprouts and stems, make a nice pretty fall leaf, beautiful colors in the fall now. And with the tulsi plant, which is dear to the Lord, I just transplanted all my tulsi plants. I'll show you. I just brought them in. I had them all growing all summer. And then I saved the seeds. And there, make the little, these, can you see? Hang on, let me do this because somebody was complaining that they couldn't see this on the recording. These are all tulsis. She's got her lights there. So they've got the grow lights. It's kind of taking over my hallway. It's got all this silver foil, but that's it's right next to the pellet stove. So it should be nice and warm. You see? So there's about 100 there. They probably won't all survive, but at least they have a chance. I'm doing the best they can. So it's bhakti, and they'll die. But when you do puja, you put a leaf on whatever you offer. You put a leaf of tulsi on the food, and then you do puja with tulsi. This one's dying already, but you try. You bring them in, put them outside all summer. So that's tulsi, sacred tulsi. That's Maha. This is the Bhagavatam, my friends, right here. See, this is the Bhagavatam in Sanskrit. See it? You see? It's upside down. All right. So where were we? I don't know. Let's get back to this story. We haven't really. All right. So let's put this like that. And so we should worship with the Tulsi plant, which is dear to the Lord. So she's considered to be a great Vaishnavi, Tulsi, like the Ganga is a river and also a goddess. And in the Vedas are books, but they're also goddesses. So Tulsi is a plant, but also a great devotee of Vishnu. She just takes that form to serve Vishnu. He likes Tulsi, so she takes the form of Tulsi. And that way she gets off it. She can sit on his plate and he eats her. How intimate is that? She enters it, Vishnu. Alternatively, right here now that's an option. You do that's a puja kind of option. So what's the alternative? Well, the sage who is peaceful, whose mind is fixed and speech controlled, and who subsits by frugally eating the produce of the forest, alternative, can worship a physical form of the Lord. That's a deity. So presumably this would be a mental form then. Oh, that's the mantra form. Okay, so Patanjali gives us a mantra form. So you do this mantra. I don't know why it's alternative, because here this is normally a puja type things. But anyway, let's not worry. a physical form of the Lord made from earth or water, etc. And then the footnote there, we'll talk about the 12 different kinds of you can make a deity from anything. By means of his and worship the deity. By means of his inconceivable personal powers, the Lord will perform deeds in the form of the pure activities of its incarnations. One should contemplate those deeds. So another way of fixing the mind on Bhagavan is to fix the mind on the deeds and activities, the leelas of Bhagavan. And we'll be getting a sense of that next week. And that's really what our Indian culture is, the Ramayana, the Krishna stories. Even today, kids grow up with the Amar Chitra Katha comics. We have our whatever Jack and Jill comics, Superman, Spider-Man, but kids will, even in my class, many kids grow up, they read this comic series, Amar Chitra Katha, that's put out. You can find it probably in Indian grocery stores. If you have kids, they might like the comic books. Amar Chitra Katha. They're all about the different deities and so forth. It became a huge success, these comics series. Right. What the acts of worship to God were practiced by the ancients to the best of their abilities. You do what you can. One should concentrate on the Lord by chanting the mantra in the heart. Now, do you say it aloud or in the mind? Well, japa really means to say it aloud, but some traditions will say, promote doing it in the mind. My tradition is always, loud meaning just so that you can hear it, because then the mind can focus on the sound. It's easier to grasp. The mind itself gets distracted. So if you're chanting the mantra in the mind, it can easily be distracted. Number one. And number two, there's nothing wrong with that. But number two, their sound is, Ishvara manifests as sound. It's a sound. Of course, people talk about the internal sound, but the mantra is also sort of the unspoken sound. So, there's different ways of thinking about it and different theologies about it all. Personally, I take the sound, the japa, the actual word japa means to recite aloud, actually, but very quietly, not kirtan. But again, some people do promote mental chanting, internal chanting. So, and this seems to be here, actually. One should concentrate on the Lord by chanting the mantra in the heart. Not everywhere, but this particular passage. The Lord, here, this is what's important. The Lord manifests in the form of the mantra, my friends. This is how to fix the mind on Bhagavan. All these other things are there as well, but the mantra is the primary practice, especially in the age of Kali. All the texts stress that. And this is something that pervades all Indian traditions, wherever their differences may be, mantra right back to the Upanishadic period. So it's a venerable, it's an ancient, practice that goes back to the earliest sources that we have. Okay. The Lord increases the loving feelings of his devotees. Being worshipped, in other words, love of God is a gift of God. It's God that gives it to us. You can't get love by your own nothing. You do puja, mantra, do it till you're blue in the face. But it's ultimately has to be given by God. So what we're trying to attract the attention of God when we do all of these practices. Unlike your Atman, which you can get by your own willpower, by your own prowess, by your own yogic virtuosity, by your own forte, that's not the case with bhakti. It's given. So what do we do? Why are we doing all this stuff then? To simply please Bhagavan in the hope that we capture his attention, and he gives us a drop of bhav, just a drop. The bhakti just prays for a drop. So the Lord, it's the Lord who increases the loving feelings of the devotees. Nothing can get into the mind unless, are we clear about this? Nothing can get into the mind. It has to come from the outside. Think of anything, any affection that you have. Think of your favorite ice cream. You could summarize, you can manifest it in the mind. Why? Because it came into the mind. You tasted it for the first time. There must have been a first time. So then it came into the tongue or into the ear and some nice music, and then it becomes recorded as a samskara, and then it can manifest in your mind. But it doesn't self-manifest because matter is neither created nor destroyed. It just recircles. So it has to get into the mind. So love of God is no different. It has to get into the mind. And how does it get into the mind? It's not a material thing. Material thing gets into the mind because you encountered that material thing. You go and you see something, now it's in your mind, you have an imprint of it. You go eat something for the first time, let's try a new type of food, it gets into the mind through the tongue for the first time. It has to come from the outside. Well, where's love of God going to come? It's not a material thing. It's not something you can go out and get it from out there. So how's it going to get in? Well, it's bestowed. It's given. So pujas and all of that is what we're doing is we're trying to attract the attention of Bhagavan, my friends. This is why humility is the foundation stone of bhakti. Even Patanjali, in his utterly minimalistic way, calls it pranidhana. The Lord increases the loving feelings of his bhaktas. Being worshipped in this way by devotional acts of worship through body, mind, and words, by people worshipping free from guile. You're not asking for anything, no cheating. The Bhagavata calls it cheating religion. If you ask God for stuff, it's called cheating religion. The Bhagavata itself, right in the beginning, Kaitava Dharma. And the tradition makes a huge deal about that. What's cheating? What's cheating? This is cheating. I come and I pretend I'm your friend. And but really I want you to give me some money. But I'm all nice and compliment, you know. And then eventually it comes out, oh, by the way, could you lend me a $5? That's cheating. My friendship is cheating. I'm not really interested in you at all. I want my $5. Or I want knowledge. You help me with my homework, so I make friends with you. And then I'm like, oh, could you help me with my homework? Cheating. So you approach God, oh, bhakti, bells, lights, incense, and then, oh, could you mind helping out? Oh, I need well, $5, but not from God. About 500 quid is God, isn't it? 500 quid, right? Or give me moksha. Even that, even what Patanjali's offering, the Krishna tradition, 16th century, cheating, kaitava. You're doing Ishvara Pranidhana, but you don't care about Ishvara. You want the Samadhi Siddhi here. You want the Siddhi of Samadhi. Patanjali calls it Siddhi. Samadhi Siddhi, you know the verse. Cheating. Not this. So therefore, free from guile. He bestows welfare such as dharma, etc., to the living entities according to their desires. But if you want stuff, he'll give it to you. It's not a problem. You might be cheating. Like someone, I may know someone's really making friends with me. If they want a $5, well, I can still give them a $5. Okay, what do I care? Okay, make them happy. Here, take a $5. So God can give you what you want. Detached from the pleasures of the senses by means of practicing bhakti yoga with great seriousness and with mind always absorbed in the Lord, one should worship in this way to attain liberation. Of course, we've said many times that's not the real goal. Addressed in this way, right? The prince offered obeisance to Narad and circumambulated him. You circumambulate as you do the temple. If you go into an Indian temple, you go around the inner sanctum sanctorum. You see Indians going around it 3 times. Or you can, it's a circumambulation. You can do it to a great being. That's he's doing it to a great being. Then he entered the holy Madhu forest, which is imprinted by the footsteps of Hari. Hari's always there. As Dhruva was entering the forest to perform penance, Narad had entered the king's inner palace. So now he leaves Dhruva, goes to the palace. He was welcomed with due respect by the king, and after he was comfortably seated, the sage addressed him. Narada said, "O king, why are you pining with a withered face?" Remember, the sages come, they don't chit-chat, but they might just have a lead question. Why are you pining with a withered face, right? Remember Chitraketu was wailing for his son. Why are you pining? Is there something lacking in your pursuit of the 4 goals of life, right? Dharma, Artha, and Kama. He only mentions 3 here because he's the king. He's probably not interested in moksha. And the king said, "Oh, wise Narada, my son, a boy of 5 years, along with his mother, has been banished by me. I am a cruel..." So he's lamenting. I'm cruel. He's a good king. "I'm cruel soul who is under the control of a woman, O great sage," the second wife. "O Brahman, he's without a guardian. May the wolves not have devoured the boy. His lotus face faded while he was resting or sleeping." Sounds like Bharat with his deer. "Oh, woe is me. You should consider me to be a cruel-hearted person. I did not welcome Dhruva, who was desiring to climb up on my lap out of love. I am the lowest of rascals." Lamentation is good, my friends. All this nonsense about not being guilty. Guilt is good. Guilt is a way of burning up karma, not to make yourself dysfunctional. All this new age babble about not feeling guilty. Guilt, it depends on the type of guilt, not. But if you've done something wrong and you intensely lament, that lamentation itself burns up that karma. It's a kind of mental tapasya. And it's a good thing, as long as you don't, it has to be done in a sort of mature way. So he's lamenting. You're unaware. So Narada says, don't worry. Your son is protected by the gods, O Lord of men, with a small g. You are unaware of his power. He's a warrior. He's a 5-year-old little warrior. His fame will spread all over the world. He will perform an exceedingly difficult deed, even for kings to perform, O master. He will return after a short period of time, O king, and spread your fame far and wide. So now Dhruva is going to start his meditation. After hearing these words spoken by the celestial sage, the king, lord of the earth, ceased paying any attention to the fortunes of the kingdom and immersed his mind solely in thoughts of his son. So he's really utterly, lamenting and burning in the fire of lamentation, but in a good way. I don't know, what's wrong with lamenting? I lament all the time. And it's a way of, re-establishing your resolve, being fully aware of something you've done wrong, right? And deeply engaging it and deeply establishing a resolve not to do it again. And the very, sorrow that you did something or spoke incorrectly, whatever it is, that's fire. It's a mental fire that burns the fruit of karma. It's a type of tapasya. It's called prayaschita, regret. So, meanwhile, in the forest, Dhruva took a bath and fasted that night attentively, 5 years old. Then he worshipped the Supreme devotedly according to the instruction of the sage. Now, you want some tapas, my friends? How about this? He passed 1 month worshipping Hari while eating only wood apple and jujube fruits after every 3 nights, and then only as much as was needed to sustain him. So he fasted for 3 days, and after 3 days he ate this. These are very, I think they're pretty bitter. These are forest, wild wood apple and jujube. I'm not sure what jujube is. Then that's for a whole month. Then every 3 nights. Then for the 2nd month, as he worshipped the Lord, the boy took for his food withered leaves and grass once every 6 days. You want tapas? 6 days, and once every 6 days, leaves and grass. And it goes on for 6 months. The boy spent the 3rd month with his mind fixed in unbroken samadhi on the Lord, who is praised in the best of verses. And now what did he do the 3rd month? Consuming water only every 9 days. He underwent the 4th month, meditating on the Lord with his breath under control, while subsisting only on air inhaled once every 12 days. So now he did the 4th kind of, Patanjali calls it the 4th pranayama, chaturthi. I forget what the verse is, something, beyond this is the 4th, right after the 3 pranayamas. Every 12 days, 1 breath of air. When the 5th month arrived, the son of the king stood on 1 foot, Ekapada Hastasana, as immobile as a pillar while meditating on Brahman with his breath control. Now he stopped breathing. He withdrew his mind, which is the support of the senses and sense objects, from all objects, pratyahara. Meditating on the form of Bhagavan in his heart, he gave up awareness of anything else. Because Dhruva was concentrating on Ishvara, the primeval Lord Brahman, right? This is personal Brahman, is impersonal and personal, who is the support of the entire material manifestation, the 3 worlds began to tremble. So this is an interesting verse. It seems to be saying Dhruva is so intensely concentrating on Ishvara, and since Ishvara is the support of the world, because Dhruva wasn't breathing, the whole world's suffocated through lack of air. There was somehow, and it doesn't really explain. I'll have to, one day I'd like to read the commentaries here. What is the actual yogic metaphysics here? Because when I translated the Yoga Sutras, I really thought deeply in the 3rd chapter. What are the metaphysics? And a lot of the commentators didn't have a lot to say, so I had to reconstruct a lot of that. So what is it? Somehow or other, since Vishnu is the whole, the way it's framing it here, because he's concentrating on the whole, then there is this sort of, there's no more micro and macro. his mind is fixed on the whole, on Ishvara, who is the universe. Therefore, his mind, it becomes the universe, or penetrates the universe. Patanjali talks about this. Your mind can penetrate the entire universe. So therefore, your state of being, so therefore there is this permeable, I'm stammering for words here. There is this porous boundary between your mind and the universe, and therefore the state of your mind somehow or other seeps into the state of the whole universe. So because he had stopped breathing, somehow or other the whole world was deprived of air. That's how I understand it now. I'd like to think more about it. But what I'd really like to do is see if any commentators have anything to say here. So the three worlds began to tremble. When the boy prince stood on one leg, the earth, being pressed by his toe, inclined on one side. So he now becomes heavy as the whole universe, because his mind is absorbed in the universe. So therefore the earth trembles, like it says, just as a boat mounted by a tusker elephant lurches to the left and right at each of its steps. He's basically become the universe by dint of intense absorption on the universe. He hasn't become it metaphysically, but he's identified with it. His mind is manifesting the qualities of the universe by meditating on the universe, one of which is that it's heavy. By dint of his undeviating concentration, I don't think I'm quite, I think I need to like really fine tune what's going on here, and I need to spend some time on the commentaries. By dint of his undeviating concentration on the soul of the universe, Dhruva blocked the pathways of air in the universe as he was meditating, because he had stopped breathing. That merging of the micro into the macro, the universe is now deprived of air, just as he deprived himself of air. So this principle seemed to be somehow not that he's become the universe in a kind of total metaphysical sort of way, but somehow or other his state of mind has transcended his own limited space and is now seeped over into the universe. And therefore the state of, so on one hand, the universe is penetrating his mind, so it becomes heavy, and the earth is lurching, but also vice versa. His state of lack of air has now permeated the universe. It seems to be a two-way kind of exchange between micro and macro. So at this, the denizens of the other realms, along with their rulers, feeling greatly afflicted on account of their own breathing being blocked, approached Hari for help. That's what you do. And the celestials, they go to Vishnu. Oh Lord, we do not understand the cause of this suppression of air, which is affecting the condition of all beings, moving and non-moving. Therefore, please free us from this distress, right? We have approached you for shelter, since you can bestow shelter. So they're all being asphyxiated. The Lord Sri Bhagavan said, don't fear. I will restrain the boy from his extreme austerities as a warrior. He can do this. And by the way, a lot of the yogis in the Upanishads anyway, when we look at their names, their warrior names, do you think about it? Who's going to go to the forest? Bengal tigers, snakes, wild elephants. What kind of a spirit is going to go to the forest? A warrior spirit. So a lot of the yogis, I'm not saying all of them or anything like that, but there seems to be, I remember reading an article that there was a preponderance of Kshatriya, warrior names, amongst the names that we find in the Upanishads. Just a little aside, right? Return to your abodes, don't fear. The son of King Uttanapada has absorbed himself in me. It is because of this that your breath has been choked. Yes, it wasn't just his mind. Sorry, I said it was absorbed in the universe. It's absorbed in Ishvara, who is the universe. So this permeable barriers is through the medium of Ishvara, who is everything. So by absorbing the mind on Ishvara, he's manifesting some of the qualities of Ishvara in terms of heavy. See, I don't feel I can quite. I feel like I'm struggling a bit to really articulate this. So I need to work a little bit more on what's going on here. So their fear dispelled by these words, the gods offered their respect. and set out to their abodes throughout the three worlds. And Vishnu, the thousand-headed one, so this is Shesha again. Remember Shesha? That's the one Chitraketu saw. But he comes in the form of Vishnu. So Vishnu and Shesha are one. Shesha is just a form of Vishnu. So therefore, if Patanjali is considered an incarnation of Shesha, that points to sort of a Vaishnava point of origin, actually. So Vishnu, the thousand-headed one, that's Shesha, Sahasrashirsha, right? Sahasrashirsha, or what is it? Abahu Purusha, something. Shanka Chakrasi Dharinam, Sahasrashirsha, thousand-headed. Shvetam, white. So that's Shesha. But so the same thing, but here he's going to appear as Vishnu. He also went to Madhuvan on Garuda, his eagle carrier. So even the little gods have carriers, and Nandi Shiva has his bull, and Vishnu has Garuda, which is the name of the Indonesian airlines, actually, Garuda Airlines. So Indian culture spread to Southeast Asia, and even though Indonesia became, other than Bali, became, Islam spread there, but the substratum is all Hindu, and the stories and so forth. So with the desire of seeing his servant Dhruva, Vishnu, on account of the intensity of Dhruva's mature yoga practice, appeared in the lotus of Dhruva's heart, effulgent as lightning. He now appeared. So Dhruva was concentrating on the form of Ishvara in his heart, which means the mind. The heart means the mind. That's the abode of the Atman, and it permeates the body from the heart region, and so does the mind stuff, the Chitta, Shakti permeate, and the Manas. So he sees him in his heart, in the mind. So that deity, maybe you have the deity, the mantra manifests its inner nature. Remember, Ishvara comes as mantra, so then that mantra kind of sort of dissolves, so to speak, or manifests the personal nature. It is Ishvara. So Ishvara can manifest in sound, but he can manifest his personal form from the sound. So he appeared in his heart, effulgent as lightning. Dhruva beheld him. Then Vishnu suddenly disappeared. Opening his eyes, Dhruva saw him standing outside in the same position. So you can have a vision of God in your mind internally that no one else can see, or you can open your eyes and have a vision externally. Probably nobody else can see that either, but you can have an internal or an external vision. This is an important story. So the vision can be in your mind. So you start off by constructing a form of Vishnu with your samskaras, with the mantra, or a deity made of samskaras, or you can do all of the above at the same time, or listening to the stories, and then so that's your offering, that's your practice, you're doing that in order to purify the mind, and in order to just hope that you'll attract the attention of Vishnu, which is the case here. And then Vishnu can manifest in the mind or outside the mind. Seeing that vision, Dhruva was thrown into confusion. He prostrated his body on the ground like a stick. That's danda, vat, like a stick. And offered obeisance. Beholding Lord Vishnu, the boy was as if drinking him with his eyes, kissing him with his mouth, and embracing him with his arm. The vision of God, you just want to absorb him through all of your senses. He's so beautiful and smells gorgeous, and everything. His voice is gorgeous. Everything is just that being than whom nothing greater can be imagined. Hari is situated in Dhruva's heart as well as in everything, and understood that Dhruva, who was standing with hands folded in supplication, pranjalir anatosmi, was intensely desiring to speak, but he did not know how to do so. We can't even glorify God without the blessings of God. Out of compassion, he touched the boy on this cheek with his conch shell made of Brahman. Are we clear? Vishnu's arms, his bracelets, his necklaces, his conch shell, it's all made of Brahman. It's not made of, none of it's made of matter. His yellow dhoti, his garland of forest flowers, my friends, it's all saguna Brahman. It's all made of Brahman. See? I'm glad it said that. Here, the conch shell is made of Brahman. At this, Dhruva understood the will of the Supreme Being, whose glories are widespread. right? Everybody glorifies God. And if you're an atheist, you still indirectly deny God, but you're still, by doing that, you're still kind of absorbing your mind in God in a rather negative sort of way, but still, he's the most famous being. Everyone has a position on God, right? People don't have a position on you and I all over the world. No one's ever heard of us, but everyone's heard of God, whether you accept or you reject. So he's the most famous. He's going to be the most everything, most beautiful, most omniscient, everything, most. Absorbed in devotional feelings, right? Which Vishnu has bestowed by touching him. So that touch is not, it's not Shaktipat or anything like that. That's Shaktipat is physiological. It's not, no, this is another level again. So he's bestowing love, devotional feelings. He slowly offered to the Lord in praise the divine words that had been bestowed upon him with which to do so. Everything is given to us, everything. And when we enter Krishna's divine realm, we get a spiritual body that's given to us as well, so that we can worship God for all eternity. We get the prakritic bodies in this realm according to karma, and we get spiritual bodies in the divine realm according to our love and our bhav, which is also bestowed. And then Dhruva, his future abode, the pole star. Remember, he wanted a kingdom greater than his father, so that he gets given the pole star, and it's called the Dhruva. The name of the pole star in Sanskrit is Dhruva, and it's named after this story. So the pole star is fixed, would remain permanent. Remember, he wanted a kingdom greater than everybody that would never change. So then he gets given the pole star. So then he gives him some eulogies, and I'm not sure if we have time to read everything. You, the possessor of all power, so even though he's 5, Vishnu gives him these words and the intelligence and to utter them, because Dhruva wanted to glorify him. You, the possessor of all power, have entered within me, and with your own power have animated these words of mine from their state of dormancy. You've allowed me to speak. You've given me the words, as well as my other faculties, hands, feet, ear, skin, and my life airs. Obeisance to you, Bhagavan. Nama Bhagavan. Namaste Bhagavate. Oh, Bhagavan, you're the one supreme person. Through your personal powers, you create all the primordial material ingredients of the world. So the world is also a Shakti of Bhagavan, which consists of the vast gunas and is known as Maya. Maya is nothing other than the gunas. Maya is not something else. It's not that there's the 3 gunas and then there's Maya. Where do you see Maya on the chart of Sankhya? You've all got Sankhya charts on the back of your yoga books. Where's Maya? It's not there. There's 25 elements. So then what's Maya? The 3 gunas themselves. Devi Isha Guna Mayi Mama Maya. So and then you enter the ever-changing gunas and illuminate them. So not only are the gunas Vishnu Shakti, but then he enters and animates and illuminates them, like fire lighting up an assortment of wood. So let's let me see how the Lord said. Okay. I think we can do this. We've got 15 minutes. We can spill over. Lord Brahma was completely surrendered to you. We did the story of Brahma, I think it was the first session we did. O Lord, and so perceive the universe by means of the wisdom bestowed by you, like a person awakening from sleep. Remember, he's the first yogi, first created being, picks up, from the last cycle, he comes to consciousness on top of the lotus flower. So that's a reference to that story. Your lotus feet were the refuge for Brahma when he was seeking liberation. What learned person would forget them? You're a friend of the downtrodden. You're a wish-fulfilling tree. There's a tree not in Krishna's realm, but in the celestial realm. It's in our universe that bestows anything. It's called Kalpa Vriksha. Anything you ask, it bestows. Well, wish-fulfilling tree. So God is that. You bestow birth, death, and liberation. Certainly those who desire the gratification of this body, avidya, which is like a corpse, stinky old body. We have to work so hard to make it smell nice and make it look attractive. It's a stinky old body full of obnoxious substances, let's face it. Like a corpse. Those who desire, they want to enjoy this corpse and worship you for other things, apart from liberation, are people whose intelligence has been stolen by your Maya. Such sense pleasure is available even for people in hell. Even the animals get sense pleasure. They don't have to work for it. We have to work for it. We're worse off than the animals. Animals they eat, they mate, they have sex. They don't have to work for sex. They just go up and jump on another animal. So in that sense, it's easier. The animals have greater access to sense gratification than we do. So that's not the goal of human life. So such pleasure is available even for people in hell. Even in hell, there is people down there have their notion, right, of what is less hellish and more hellish. So they have their version of sense pleasure. Something is less hellish than something else. Look, here's another little dig at Atman seekers. The pleasure experienced by embodied beings from meditating on your lotus feet and from hearing about your deeds from your devotees does not exist in Brahman. So if you attain your Atman, there's none of this personalism there. There's no Bhagavan, gorgeous, that you can have a loving relationship with. No, it's a state of Satchidananda, eternal, infinite, quality-less bliss. No God there, no Bhagavan, no love, no divine presence. It's just the infinite Brahman. So look at this. It doesn't exist in Brahman. The lotus feet of God and the pleasure that the bhaktas get from this personal relationship with God doesn't exist in Brahman. Even though that is also part of your own majesty. Brahman is another Shakti of Krishna. It's his Chitti, it's Krishna's, Shakti also. It's his, there's various names for the different Shaktis. So what to speak of the lesser pleasure experienced by the residents of the celestial realms, right, with much less than Brahman, who fall from their celestial air vehicles when struck by the sword of death. The celestials die too. They can't stay up in the celestial realm. So here's his prayer. Let me always have the association of those great pure-minded devotees. We seek the association of bhaktas, real bhaktas. And I told you before, you'll be lucky if you find 3 or 4 that are real confidants, that you can really let down your ego and really share your heart, your struggles, your moments of inspiration. Treasure that if you have such devotees in your life, such bhaktas. Let me, and this is the prayer of the bhakta, let me always have the association. He's not asking for liberation. Let me come back, but if I do come back birth after birth, I only ask for this, that you give me the company of bhaktas. Why company of bhaktas? So that we can discuss, we can share, we can do kirtan, we can read the stories, we can, we can immerse our minds together. Bhagavan in all the various ways that one can do that, in pujas and mantras and kirtans and so forth. Let me always have the association of those great pure-hearted devotees who are constantly immersed in devotion to you, O unlimited one. With this, I will become intoxicated with drinking the nectar of the narrations about you. That's the lila, the stories. And we're going to do some lilas. The narration is called Katha next week. And easily cross the ocean of material existence, brimming with great dangers, right? Death, all the dangers of samsara. O Lord with the lotus navel, your devotees' hearts are enamored by the fragrance of your lotus feet. It's not just vision of God, but God's smell and touch. It's all wondrous. Those who associate with the devotees forget about this mortal life. Sons, friends, households, wealth, and wives. When you meet real devotees, you forget about everything else. You just simply want to associate with the great bhaktas. So, 18, upon being glorified in this way by the intelligent, noble-hearted Dhruva, the Lord, who is affectionate to his devotees, greeted him kindly and spoke as follows. And I guess I skipped some stuff there. I know the resolve in your heart, O Prince. You have upheld your vow, so I will grant you the boon which you desired, even though it is one that is hard to attain. Right? My dear boy, one place that has never been ruled over by anyone, that was the initial desire he had. Of course, now Dhruva's ashamed that he had that desire. He had approached God. He wasn't interested in bhakti. He wanted a kingdom greater than his father. And his mother said, well, you have to ask Vishnu. He didn't know who Vishnu was. He said, all right, I'll go find Vishnu. I'll ask him. So even though now he's actually had a vision of God, he doesn't want any of that anymore. That's what happens. Even if you approach God for material things, but if you absorb your mind in God, what happens is you lose all interest in those material things and you feel ashamed of them, but God can still give them to you. So he says, okay, and he wanted a place that had never been ruled over by anyone. So yeah, all right. One place that has never been ruled over by anyone else is the pole star, an effulgent, unmoving realm, right? The circuit of the luminary stars, constellation, and planets revolves around it. Da, 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 da. So then he gets that, and then after this life, you will go to my abode, Vaikuntha. So I'll give you what you desired for the rest of this life, and then you'll come to me in my divine realm. But this is the realm of Vishnu, not of Krishna. It is beyond the realm of the sages and worshipped by all the realms. Thus, the Lord, who had been worshipped in this way, bestowed his personal abode on Dhruva. So he grants him that, the pole star for this rest of this life, and then his divine realm, personalist realm in the next. So then Bhagavan, whose banner bears the emblem of Garuda, returned to his abode. He goes back to Vaikuntha while the boy was watching. Dhruva returned to the city. Although he had fulfilled his wish and attained the fulfillment of his resolve by serving the feet of Vishnu, the boy was not very happy in mind. So this is odd. Vidura spoke, how is it that Dhruva considered his own personal goal to be unfulfilled? He understands the goals of human life, right? The 4 goals: dharma, artha, kama, moksha, duty, well-being, the fulfillment of desire, and liberation. In just one life, he obtained the supreme abode, which is achieved by worshipping the feet of Hari, the possessor of Maya. See, Maya is a Shakti of, the gunas are a Shakti of Vishnu. You want to go beyond the gunas, my friends, you have to worship Vishnu according to the Bhagavatam. And now, and so the question is, why was he? Why did he feel unfulfilled? So let's go down to, look, then Dhruva said, even the celibate Sananda and his brothers did not attain the Lord's abode in one birth through their samadhi. These are other boy sages. They're also 5 years old. It's a story for another day. Whereas I attained the shelter of his feet in 6 months. But here's why he's upset. But my mind was fixed on some other goal, and so I squandered the opportunity. He's ashamed that he'd gone into the forest looking for God with this mundane warrior desire, that he'd been offended, and his ego and his Kshatriya pride, and he wanted a kingdom, and now he's ashamed of it all. And he feels like he's squandered, asking for some material thing. Because that, he was meditating on Vishnu, but with this goal in mind. Just see my materialism, says Dhruva. I'm so unfortunate. After attaining the lotus feet of the one who can dispel samsara, I asked for something that was temporary instead. So now he's lamenting his original foolishness. But of course, he's a great bhakta, and the story kind of, right? I perceive reality through the lens of differences. Me and my mother and my king and my father, and I was offended. These are the dwandvas, the differences. And so after submitting to the influence of Maya, I behave like someone asleep to my Atman. I thought I was my body mind. I thought I was a warrior. I thought I was dishonored. Even though there are no differences in reality, right? In ultimate reality, everything is Vasudev Sarvamati. I was tormented in my heart by the scourge of enmity towards my brother. So I requested him for something useless. A higher planet, a higher realm than my father, useless. Like requesting medicine for someone already dead. He's dead. We are asking for medicine for. So it's useless. It's useless. The soul of the universe is very hard to please, yet having managed to please him with austerities, I then went and requested him for samsara, for a kingdom. He who could dispel samsara. I'm so foolish. Alas, like a fool who, because of little merit, requests some meager chaffed rice from someone who is a sovereign, right? You go to the king and you get the audience of the king, and the king can give you anything, and you ask for some puffed rice, some chaffed rice. What kind of a fool would do something like that? So I, because of illusion, requested for my pride to be upheld from the Lord, who was offering me his own personal abode, and I wanted to one-up my dad with my pride. And so the story then winds down, and the king was just ecstatic, and he comes to meet his son, and then even the 2 queens come, and even the other queen, she sort of becomes a good queen, and the story winds down. and then Uttama and Dhruva, you know, brothers, and they embrace each other. So that's it. We're pretty much on the you know, it's a good place to wind down. I'm going to throw a log on the fire, and then we'll take some questions, or if you have anything you want to okay. Just so the chat, and I'm just going to throw a log in the fire and quickly grab some tea, and I'll be back in 2 minutes. You want to take a bathroom break, my friends? Please do. Okay, my friends, we'll take your comments or questions, or it's, all right, so we go to the
Edwin Ji.
we have Shanti. Go ahead, Shanti.
Namaste. I want some clarification about the klesha
You're
karma.
muted, Shanti.
Am I? No, I'm not. Not on
Do
my
I have
end.
to unmute you? Maybe I have to unmute you.
I can hear her.
I don't know. How do
We
I
can hear
unmute you?
Shanti.
It says mute all. But in the past, you ask all to unmute. Play. Can you hear? Try now.
Can you hear me now?
Mute all. Get that? Invite. No, I don't know. How do I? But I've never had to do this before. Can't you just unmute yourself?
I
We
did.
can all hear her.
We can all hear her.
Allow participants to, yeah, I'm allowing you to unmute yourself. You can unmute yourself.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, on your computer, the bottom, there should be an unmute.
I did.
There should be
Mine
on
is-
far left, on the far left.
I'm unmuted.
I can't hear you. Can anybody
don't-
else speak?
I don't think he hears
Everyone
us at
else is hearing her. Oh, why am I not hearing her?
all.
I don't know. We didn't have this problem before. Oh, you know how I know why? I unmuted myself so that the when the email came in, it wouldn't bing. Okay, my fault, Chanti. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. Thank you. My question was, I was trying to find a clarification between the klesha, samskaras, and the karma theory. So the kleshas leads to samskaras. So eventually, doesn't the samskaras then lead to my karma?
The
And
clay,
then there are the sanchita karma and the prarabdha karma
yeah,
and the kriyamana karma. So you mentioned something about the act. Well, I won't confuse that. So how are these interconnected?
well, first of all, everything is samskara. The kleshas are a type of samskara. There's also aklishta samskaras. They're not all samskaras are klishta. There's agla. So if I think of Bhagavan, that's also like when I'm reading the stories, all of the repetition about Krishna, and he's blue and he wears a yellow dhoti and he wears a garland of forest flowers. I'm reading that. All those samskaras are going into my mind, and they're sitting there and allowing me to then, when I'm not reading, I can conjure up those samskaras. So samskara is either, Patanjali said, vritayaha, panchatayaha, the fifth verse, klishta, aklishta. The vrittis are either klishta or aklishta. Remember, vrittis come from samskaras. So samskaras are either klishta or aklishta. So they're klishta if they're based on avidya, ignorance, meaning I'm body mind, and then everything that comes from that is klishta. So if I'm body mind, then asmita, and this very particular body mind, and then this particular body mind likes certain things, and they're ragas, and doesn't like other things, so they're dveshas, and then there's abhinivesha. But then if I'm a yogi, instead of avidya, I'm the opposite, vidya. I'm in knowledge, so that's a samskara, all the teachings. And I have a different asmita. What's my asmita? Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, right? So I am dasosmi, Bhagavanka, I am the servant of Bhagavan, and then I get different ragas. I have raga for Bhagavan and vairagya for the material things, but raga for Bhagavan, that's raga nuga bhakti. So samskaras are any activity in the mind, unless you're in a complete state of nirodha, which Patanjali is advocating. Other than that, any vritti, any thought at all is coming from a samskara. So samskara is the klishta or aklishta, that's up to us. So the kleshas are a particular kind of samskara that come from avidya, but the opposite is also there, which are different kind of samskaras, which comes from vidya, and that's the samskaras that a jivan mukta uses to navigate the world. Now, karma is also samskara. So if all the avidya vrittis that then underpin action, they generate karma. So that karma has a psychic bond, if you will. The Mimamsas call it adrishta, the unseen bond, the apurva, the unseen bond with its effect. So when I act in the world under avidya, those actions are all recorded as samskara memories, but they also have a psychic connection, which I can't see, but Ishvara can see with the result. So karma is action itself, but also the result that it generates. Now, I don't see that. That result is external. It comes to me from the outside, but the actual karma that I did is in my mind. And therefore, that's how the effect comes to me and not to somebody else, because the deed that I did in avidya has a psychic connection with the effect. Now, the Nyaya school won't quite talk about it that way. They will say it's Ishvara who makes sure that the effects come to the person who did the cause. And that's one of the reasons why they posited Ishvara, because somebody has to connect truth with their effects. So they don't talk about psychic connection so much as, but either way, the karma is in my mind in the sense of that I have everything I do, I have a samskara for it, and everything I do in ignorance is connected with an effect, whether it's Ishvara who makes that connection later on when the effect has to come, or whether it's some kind of a adrishta connection, it doesn't matter. So karma is samskara. Samskaras are everything in the mind, along with their results, which are outside of the mind, because the effects come from outside, right? If I do some harm to you, so now let's say I slap you, so I have a memory of that, that's imprinted in my memory, and that carries even many lives, it's still there. But the effect from that, somebody has to slap me in some future life, that so that's karma. So karma is the memory of the action. Remember, karma just means action, actually, but inherent in the notion of action is reaction. So therefore, the karma is a memory, the klesha is a memory, bhakti is a memory, everything is memory. As long as we're embodied, everything is in the mind.
So, I mean, just coming to a more practical way. So we in this group must have had memories at some past life, and something must have triggered each one of our memories in a different way that has brought us together. Am I right in thinking that way?
I mean, it could be. Who knows? You know, Yudhishthira says no one can understand the workings of karma. It could be the case that somehow or other we have any group, not just this group. I mean, there's some karmic reason for any, bumping into someone at the post office you've never met before. I mean, in some sort of way that everything is determined by karma. But at the same time, what's mysterious is if we're free to react to that, and that's not determined, and therefore that free action, once you start really kind of trying to figure out the mechanics, it gets tricky. So, for example, if I slap you around the face now, oh, that's an awful example. If I offer you a rose, now, is it your karma that you're to receive a rose from me? If it's your karma, then how am I free agent? Am I just an instrument of karma? It gets dodgy. But where's my free will then? So somehow or other, then that's where you introduce Ishvara, that somehow there has to be, and it's beyond human comprehension. And that's why Yudhishthira in the Mahabharata says no one can understand the workings of karma. And one reason is, am I bound to give you that rose because it's your karma that you're bound to have it? In which case, if I'm bound to give it to you, I'm no longer a free agent. Or, and this is where Ishvara comes in, somehow or other, Ishvara combines your requirement of receiving a rose with somehow or other my free will at the right moment. It gets very hard to sort of really narrow in on this, and therefore at a certain point you just have to say, look, it's in the hands of Ishvara. I mean, Christians do that all the time. They just say, well, it's the mind of God. Now, the Indian traditions have a little bit more philosophical, they have more of philosophical content in the terms of past lives and karma. But when you really zoom in on it, it's very hard to, in the philosophy departments, the free will debate has been going on since the beginning of Christianity, and you can specialize in it and do a PhD in the whole, in the whole conversation between determinism and voluntarism and compatibilism. So it's clearly something that everybody has struggled with, and for me, it's one of those. It's one of those areas that we can get some general idea of it. We can make general statements like where things are determined, but we're also free. We can make these, so broad strokes with our brush about it. But when you zoom in on it, it becomes very hard to understand how determinism, meaning your requirement that you get the rose, somehow overlaps with my free agency of giving you a rose, and you're not going to get much further than that. And that's fine. There has to be things that are beyond human comprehension, as long as we're honest about it. So karma theory does a better job than a one life model, but it also has its weak points. It also has its places where at a certain point there's a stop sign. Okay, reason can't go further than this.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, Rhonda. How is Rhonda today? Namaskar, Rhonda.
Hi.
Jai Shri Radha.
Uh,
Jai Shri Radha.
Thank you. Well, just because we're talking about the reincarnation and the karma and all that kind of thing. So sometimes I also like to listen to webinars from the Hindu perspective, like the Hindu University of America, just to kind of see other sides of things and how people are interpreting. But last week you talked about appropriation with Happy Jack.
Yeah.
At the end. So just to throw this out there, so there's those of us in the West, okay? So for some reason, even if we've been raised with Christianity or Judaism or whatever religion in the West here, and but somehow we connect with these teachings of bhakti and yoga, and we come at it with a passion. Now, in the bigger picture, it's like we're kind of the people that other groups of people are saying we're appropriating these traditions, but it's like they're the tradition that is praying for a better birth, to have more access to a spiritual journey, to put it in just a short context. So anyway, what it's that conflict of, why are we so attracted to these teachings if there is this reincarnation theory? And then why are we being told that we're appropriating that, which, I don't know. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, but if you don't mind,
Yes.
let me just go back on what and touch on what we said with Happy Jack, and then I'll try to say something. If I understood where you're going with that. I for me, this whole thing about non-appropriation is just it's incoherent. It doesn't make any sense, provided it's done respectfully and so forth. If someone is going to say Westerners are appropriating Hinduism, then we can flip that around and say the Indians then should not be driving motor cars, should not be wearing Western clothes, should not be industrialized, and it works both ways. Number one. Number two, the texts themselves are quite happy to say, the Bhagavatam, because we're studying that everybody can practice bhakti. Krishna says it in the Gita. The texts themselves state this, and if those are saying that that's improper, they need to provide text to show how Westerners and others are excluded. If the texts are exclusivistic, then the Vedic texts are exclusivistic, only male Brahmanas. That means 99.9% of Indians are not allowed to study Vedanta and the Vedas. So point two, right there. Point three, yoga came to the West by Hindu teachers. It's not that Westerners went to like they did, and they went and they took the colonialization, you go and you get minerals and you exploit people's resources and bring it back to your country. The Hindu teachers came to the West. Are these people who say that this is appropriation? Do they want to mess with Aurobindo, with Shivananda, with Krishnamacharya, with Bhaktivedanta Swami, with Muktananda, all of the great teachers, the Hindu teachers, the great the great Shivananda was a great nationalist, figurehead, and Aurobindo, another great nationalist. These are people that were pivotal to the establishment of the Indian nation state. They were also yogis. They all had Western disciples. They all encouraged Westerners to take to yoga. So whoever then is saying that it shouldn't be appropriated? Do they want to mess with Shivananda and the greatest modern modern figurehead? So the whole thing falls apart when you probe it. So what we need to be thinking about is where we can agree is that it shouldn't be done disrespectfully. That these are spiritual traditions. And the other thing is, if we're going to toss out appropriation, what does that mean? Only Christians, only those born in Palestine can be Christians. Only those born in Bihar can be Buddhist. I mean, where do we draw the line here? It's absurd. So clearly a spiritual tradition, if it's genuinely a spirit tradition, it means that it deals with the spirit, not with the body, not with the culture. And therefore it must be by definition universal. If it's genuinely spiritual, otherwise it's a cultural tradition or an ethnic tradition, that's fine. That's a different, but it's genuine spiritual tradition must be universal by definition. Now, I think your question, if I understood it, was, why is it that we are, and here's another thing I think which is relevant to your question, why is it that we were so spontaneously attracted to this? How about we were doing this in a past life? So therefore, if I was a yogi in India in my past life and you were too, and now for whatever reason, some quirk of karma, we're born in the West, but what if we've been Hindu? What if we were living in India for 10 lifetimes as yogis, and now we're born in the West? Now all of a sudden we're appropriating. Well, what about my past 10 lifetimes then? So the whole thing becomes incoherent and silly if we probe it. But and I don't know, I mean, so but I do agree, and I think we can all agree that I saw an ad once from Australia, from the meat industry, and they had a dinner table. There was Zeus, and there was I don't know, a figure from all the great traditions, and they had Ganesh. They're all sitting there eating beef. Now that's inappropriate because that's cultural appropriation for clearly commercial capitalist reasons. Of course we can agree on that. Or Madonna, I think one time there was an outrage because she did some sexy dance, but she had like the 16 arms of Durga, and it was clearly a take on Durga, right? But she was there scantily clad. It was clearly that can cause offense. So that sort of thing, if that's what we're talking about, then fine. We can join with that. But to say that Westerners can't chant, what are they saying? Can't chant mantras? Can't do Ashtanga yoga? How silly is that? That's I wouldn't even waste time with that. But I would rather redirect the critique and say, what is it exactly you're talking about? Are you talking about commodification? Fine, we agree with that. But are you saying that Westerners can't practice your Patanjali and yoga? Of course, the high street and all the naked yoga, and if that's what we're talking about, and baby yoga and goat yoga, of course we might agree with that. That's not yoga, and that's commodification. But are they saying that someone can't sit and chant mantras and do kirtans and worship deities? If they're saying that, they're going against the very tradition, that the tradition itself says that anybody can do this. Number one, and the teachers that came to the West, they themselves were Indian. If we want to get racist about it, and so it's a silly. So depending on exactly what the person is saying, they might have a legitimate point, or it might just be plain, postmodern silliness. Someone took a course in grad school about, post-colonial appropriation, and it's getting a bit too silly about it. So, but remember the teachers that came, maybe that's a good place to start. They were Indians. Are they all wrong? Are they going to say that Shivananda was wrong? He was one of the greatest figureheads in India, and Aurobindo was wrong, and Krishnamacharya were wrong, that they were misguided, that they sent their students to the West and encouraged Westerners, and Vivekananda, probably the best known Hindu missionary, they were all wrong. I mean, so I would try to see exactly what is the critique, and it may be something one can agree with, or it may just be misguided. The critique itself is misguided. I'm sorry if I get a bit worked up about that, but it's so I don't know. So, but I think where you were going, I think, Rhonda, was why are we attracted? Yeah, it could be that we lived in India in past lives, and and practiced but didn't finish. Hence, we're spontaneously attracted in this life, because any kind of attraction, if it's a Ben and Jerry ice cream, it's because we had it in the past and it was a nice flavor, and then a week later we want to have the same experience and we buy the same flavor. So if we're spontaneously attracted to yoga, there's a very good chance we did it in a past life, which I think maybe was where you were coming from.
Yeah, I just wanted to have that discussion too, and I really do appreciate how you separate the commercialism, and that is pretty easy to see. I think sometimes, you know, you hear them saying, you know, Westerners shouldn't be teaching yoga, you know, I mean, which is, there's a wide range, you know, but also having practiced yoga for 20 years, or more actually. But anyway, I mean, I do see a lot of young yoga teachers who are so enthusiastic, and maybe they do a training or two. You know, they may not know all the history, they may not know all the Sanskrit, they may not know a lot, but they love it so much that they can't help but want to share.
Sure.
With whatever level they're at. And so sometimes it just makes me sad when you hear Indian-based teaching saying, you know, they should not be teaching, or they don't have a right to teach or share.
Well, those are some responses then if they're useful. I just outlined 4 or 5 points that should be useful. And if you really want to go conservative, then only Indian Brahmins should be teaching at all. So therefore, no other caste should be teaching. If you really want to go back to Vedic conservatism, it should only be, if you really want to take, and that, you know, Vedanta and the Vedas are supposed to be for male Brahmins. So if they want to go, if they really want to follow that path, then only male Brahmins should do any teaching. Good luck with that, you know, good luck with that. But bhakti certainly,
that's great.
Yeah, bhakti certainly doesn't come in that category. Only Vedic ritualism does, and Vedanta studies do. In the Vedanta, the 3rd or 4th chapter, there's a discussion about whether Sudras can teach the Veda, and they take the position that no, they can become enlightened, but they can't study the Vedanta. So if you wanted to go down that route, then maybe less than 1% of Indians should be teaching at all. Good luck with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And then I just had one other comment that you made on October 14th in that lecture that I thought was so interesting. Old age becomes your guru. And I just wondered if you could expand on that just a little.
Well, it forces us to realize the reality of the body. And, you know, and our body starts aches and pains, our teeth separate, and we have cracks between our teeth, our wrinkles appear, and the body gets more and more humiliating and less attractive. And you know, it's if you're young and beautiful, then it's easy to get sort of swept up into bodily consciousness, asmita. But as we get older, the reality of the body manifests, and that's our friend, because it prompts us into embracing the fact that we're not the body. If you think you're the body gets old, it's awful. Then you go and you fly to Brazil and you have Botox and you have facial surgery, and then you get older and older, and then you maybe become a recluse. You don't even want to show yourself in public, like some of the old classic, you know, movie stars from our parents' generation. So old age is our friend in that it forces us to realize the real nature of the body, which is subject to disease and old age. And then by confronting that, it's easier for us to detach ourselves from an old, disgusting body. It's harder to do that when the body is young and beautiful, and people are attracted to us, and people flirt with us, and people, you know, make comments about our physical good looks. It's harder to be detached from that. But when we get older, we're not getting any of that, and the body is just becoming more and more humiliating. So that's a friend.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sebastian.
Professor, everybody.
Good evening.
I was just wondering, earlier we were breaking down a little bit the mantra Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Yeah.
We were talking about how it's a mantra that you know, in which we offer our namaha to the worshipful Lord Vasudeva, and how it's a grand mantra. But the Gaudiya tradition, we choose the Hare Krishna mantra.
Yeah.
But I've always found it rather obscure because no one's really explained it to me in detail. The three parts, the Hare and the Rama. What do they refer to in our tradition?
Well, Rama is not it includes all the avatars, of course, but Rama can just mean the source of pleasure, one who gives pleasure. So it's more in that sense. Obviously, Rama of the Ramayana, even though it might be in the mantra, is not the primary meaning of the term in the Gaudiya tradition. And I forget what the discussion is on Hari, because Hari can also mean one who steals away. So it could be one who steals away your material desires, or one who steals your heart. But I forget, if you're looking for the official Gaudiya, they're going to etymologize it in ways that fits into the Braj Bhakti. And I forget what they do with Hari, but that's the sort of thing they would do. They would take, so the Rama isn't the Rama of the Ramayana, although it's obviously included in Krishna because all avatars are included in Krishna, but its primary denotation is one who gives pleasure, which obviously Krishna does. And Hari, there may be, and I don't want to speculate, but it's going to be something like one who steals the heart. Now, however, other Vrindavan traditions, like the Nimbarkis, they criticize the Gaudiyas. They say, why are you having this sort of Rama? And their mantra is Radhe Sham, Radhe Sham. Hang on, it's Radhe Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Sham, Sham Sham, Radhe Radhe. So they keep the format, but they feel the Gaudiyas are compromising Braj Bhakti, and they're compromising Sati Madhurya Bhakti. So their mantra is just Radhe Sham and Radhe Krishna. So therefore they have that, they're going to have their opinion, and it's a logic to it. And they feel the Gaudiyas have brought in inappropriate aspects of the Ishvara that are inappropriate to Braj Bhakti. So yes, so exactly how the etymology. You can ask Satyanarayan. Do you know Satyanarayan?
I know of him, but I've
him.
never spoken to him.
Yeah, we can ask him where do the Gaudiyas actually discuss the Braj semantics of the name. You can drop him a line. He's very, you just go on Jiva Institute, Satyanarayan does, just tell him that I suggested you do that, mention my name. He's my godbrother, so he'll answer you. And then share with us, how do they theologize the Hare Krishna mantra in terms of the exclusivity and the sort of yoga maya and the non-Aishwarya requirements of Braj Bhakti. But other than that, Vasudeva is usually when Krishna leaves Vrindavan, then he becomes Vasudeva. And they say Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. So when it's time to go, he doesn't actually go, but from his being, he manifests Vasudeva. And there's all these different, the teachings of Chaitanya to the Goswamis, all these different types of avatars and presences as vilasas and prakashas, and it gets to be a very complicated schema, which is probably outlined in one of the Sandarbhas, all the different ways that Krishna, who never leaves Vrindavan, manifests all these different Krishnas, some of which are Aishwarya and so on and so forth. If you're interested in that, it gets very schematic.
I think Babaji is working on the Sandarbhas right now, so maybe I'll check that out as well.
Finished them all, yeah, he's translated them all. So it's worth getting this whole set if you can, before they run out of, before it becomes out of print. At some point, it'll become out of print. So I would
try that.
They are something you really must have when, if you're interested in Gaudiya theology and, in its own terms, and not, you might want to get those if you can. Yeah.
Well, I'll ask Babaji about the mantra, and if he gets back to me by next week when we do the Krishna Leela, I'll let you know.
Excellent. Okay, thank you so much, Sebastian.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Okay, so then we have Carl. Good evening, Carl. How are you this evening?
I'm good. So good to hear these stories of the Bhagavata. Because
Yeah,
I never knew about it until I found your book in March, actually.
yeah,
That's always been, I got a question specific to what we read tonight.
Yeah.
But, I'm more familiar with Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita and the can't think of the word right now. But anyways, the two questions that come up maybe relates to something that Rhonda had asked too. On page one, you don't have to go there, but on page 297, talk about his nose and eyebrows are gorgeous. He is youthful. His limbs are attractive. Something you were talking about a minute ago. And then on page 301, it was like the boy Dhruva was like as if drinking him in, as if kissing him with his mouth and embracing him with his arms. I grew up this is totally foreign to me, to feel close, that a man is beautiful, that I want to hug him and kiss him. I mean, my son who's 40, I mean, I brought him up very different from the way I was brought up. You didn't kiss an older man. You didn't go near an older man. The older man was this Judeo-Christian, godlike, severe figure. Forget about kissing him, let alone how he might smell. So it's a mundane question, Professor, but it's important to me. I don't relate to that. I wasn't brought up that. I think maybe my son would be more able to make that transition, because we grew up hugging and kissing and smiling and playing and dancing. Completely different from what I grew up with older men. And I almost wish Krishna was a woman. I could feel better about that. But then we have to get into the ageism. Oh, she's only good when she's young and beautiful and smells good. So I've got problems with the imagery here, and it's not. I don't mean to be picky. I don't mean to be. I'm trying to feel comfortable with the psychology, the metapsychology of it. Trying to feel comfortable with it.
of course. Well, I mean, what we do is that we're projecting our mundane experiences onto God, and therefore, the idea of kissing a male is something that of course, in our day and age, that's fine, right? But it may not be attractive to everybody. But God, but it's God, and in Krishna's and Dhruva's not trying to kiss him in a sensual, sexual sort of way. There are opportunities to do that, but in Krishna Lila, then you take the form of a gopi, and we won't, probably in this workshop we won't be looking at. But if you have that blue book, if you want to sort of if you want to go to the go to page, the 5 chapters of the gopis, the gopi chapters, and that's page 498. And then there's 5 chapters, and that's actually having God as your lover, but it's all females that are doing that. So Dhruva was wanting to kiss God, was not at all sexual or anything like that. He was just overwhelmed by the beauty of God and all, both visual and sound and smell and touch and all 5 senses. And he was just, transported to a place of complete ecstasy. So he didn't actually kiss him or anything. He just wanted to absorb God through all of his senses. That's all. But it is possible to have a sexual relationship with God. If that's what one wants, then God manifests that possibility for that. But that takes place in those 5 chapters. So have a read of those and see how they strike you. But
I'm sure they're going to challenge me even more. Thank you.
Yeah, they probably will. You'll end up with more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carl. Snehi, how are you?
Professor, I'm
Yeah.
good. So Shanti's question prompted me to think about vasanas and how they're different from samskaras.
Yeah, I don't think they're different. And I studied all of the, when I did the Yoga Sutra, I read through all the commentaries, and no one quite that I recall quite came out and made a statement. But it was my understanding, whenever they spoke of vasanas, they seemed to be talking about, they are samskaras. It's not 2 different things, because anything in the mind is a samskara. There isn't anything else in the mind other than samskaras. So usually when they opted for the term vasana, they tended to be talking about deep level past life type samskaras from a past life that were deep level imprints. So my understanding is vasanas are what Freud might call this, subconscious, or in yoga would say past life samskaras. And samskara is a term that you could use for past life, but you can use for this life too. When the term vasana is used for this life, it's less in the sense of, the actual sanchiyamana karma, the ongoing karma. But when the term is used vasana for this life, it tends to mean a deep level imprint that may be surfacing in the mind, but comes from a past life. So putting all that together, it is my present understanding, and it has been my understanding for years, that vasanas are primarily past life, even though they may impinge on us in this life in terms of character and other kinds of things, but their origin is deep, more in the past, whereas samskaras can be used both ways. Present, sanchiyamana, prarabdha, and so forth. That's my understanding.
Is it correct that the meaning of vasanas is fragrance?
Yeah, I think actually let me just quickly go into Monia Williams. I'll give you the exact dhatu. And because I've got it up right here, Monia Williams, I think vas may mean, let's have a look. Vas, no matches. How about we do, vas. And it is to make fragrant, yes. So therefore, in that sense, it would be a fragrance in the mind, meaning a kind of it's flavoring the mind. A fragrance mean, so I would take it to why did they use that particular word? Because these are, I'm going to speculate now, these are, deep level imprints from the past that we don't actually recollect, unlike there are some samskaras, but let's say the samskara of what you had for breakfast this morning is easily, you can easily retrieve it, right? You can remember what you had, but you can't remember what you had for breakfast 5 lifetimes ago, but it's there. And so certain vasanas, they flavor the mind. So a flavor isn't something very, why the language of flavor? Because it's there, and it impinges on personality. It may sort of exert some sort of subconscious presence. So it's more like a smear or a taint, but it's from a past life. So that's why I don't have any better explanation. That's just pure speculation that I just gave you. I'm not saying I read that anywhere.
The vasanas are more like a subset of samskaras.
Yeah. Yes, they are. Yeah. Subset. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Put it much more clearly than I did. But it's a subset of samskara that is associated with past lives. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Zoltan.
Hello.
Hey, Zoltan.
So you mentioned that you're planning to go to India in March. Is
Yeah.
this for student, and is it possible to go along? Thank you.
I haven't fixed my plans, but yeah, I'm going to Vrindavan, and sure, if anybody wants to come at that time, they can just get in touch with me at the end of February. Hopefully I'll have a clearer plan. And by the way, I just got a message from somebody that, a yogini that been going to India for years, and make sure they've changed all the laws now. So she got to Zurich and they wouldn't let her on the plane because they no longer honor 10-year visas. Even though she has a valid 10-year visa, all of a sudden it's not valid, and she has to apply for a new visa, and then she has to have some kind of COVID documentation. So anybody's going to India, don't assume the laws. I have a 10-year visa, but it's not valid. It's still valid supposedly, but now they're not honoring that. So make sure you get your paperwork. And she's stuck in Zurich. She's been, in an expensive hotel now for a few days. So make sure that you are up on top of whatever the requirements are, because they've seemed to have changed them. But yeah, drop me a line at the end of February, and then yeah, if anybody wants to come and I'm there, sure, I can. I just stay in you don't want to stay where I stay. It's a pre-modern goshala, very, very not unmodern. That we just the bed is just a plank, and there's no furniture, nothing. And it's just on top of the cows. But there are places we can make arrangements for you to stay that's more comfortable. That's no problem at all. Jiva Institute, you can go online and check out Jiva Institute, Jiva Institute, and that's a lot of, that's my godbrother, Sachin Narayan does. I mentioned him before. He has a very nice facilities there, and in Vrindavan now has lots of comfortable facilities. I like the old Goshala just because I like the tapas, but probably don't. It's very austere. I wouldn't encourage anyone to stay there, unless they have a taste for that kind of austerity. I don't know. That's not everybody's cup of tea. But yeah, drop an email end of Feb.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, my friends? Any other comments? How was the story today? You're sort of getting used to these stories, how they're set up and so forth. Okay. So then we'll have one more session. And we'll do some Krishna Lila. And then we'll see how we feel about that. Have a good night, everybody.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Krishna.
Radhe Shyam.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night.
Good night.